After our intense Monday, today starts the general debate of the 80th session. Before proceeding to the general debate, the Assembly will hear an introduction by Secretary General of his annual report on the work of the organization. Under Agenda Item 110, in accordance with Resolution 51/241 of 31st July 1997. Please take your seat. I now give the floor to the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres. Please, could you take your seats?
Let me begin with two words we have not been able to say often enough in this hall. Madam President. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 80 years ago, in a world scorched by war, leaders made a choice: cooperation over chaos, law over lawlessness, peace over conflict. And that choice gave birth to the United Nations, not as a dream for perfection, but as a practical strategy for the survival of humanity. Many of our founders had seen firsthand the hell of the death camps and the terror of war. They knew that true leadership meant creating a system to prevent a replay of those horrors, a firewall against the flames of conflict and World War III, a forum for sovereign states to pursue dialogue and cooperation, and a concrete affirmation of an essential human truth: we are all in this together. And this General Assembly Hall is the heartbeat of that truth. It is why for decades world leaders have come to this one-of-a-kind podium. It is why you are here today. Because at its best, the United Nations is more than a meeting place. It's a moral compass, a force for peace and peacekeeping, a guardian of international law, a catalyst for sustainable development, a lifeline for people in crisis, a lighthouse for human rights, and a center that transforms your decisions, the decisions of member states, into action. 80 years on, we confront again the question our founders faced, only more urgent, more intertwined, more unforgiving. What kind of world do we choose to build together? Excellencies, we have our work cut out for us as our ability to carry out that work is being cut from us. We have entered in an age of reckless disruption and relentless human suffering. Look around. The principles of the United Nations that you have established are under siege. Listen, the pillars of peace and progress are buckling under the weight of impunity, inequality, and indifference. Sovereign nations invaded, hunger weaponized, truth silence, rising smoke from bombed-out cities, rising anger in fractured societies, rising seas swallowing coastlines. Each one a warning, each one a question. What kind of world will we choose? A world of raw power or a world of laws? A world that is a scramble for self-interest, or a world where nations come together? A world where might makes right, or a world of rights for all? Excellencies, our world is becoming increasingly multipolar, and this is positive, reflecting a more diverse, dynamic global landscape. But multipolarity without effective multilateral institutions can court chaos, as Europe has learned the hard way, resulting in World War I. It was multipolar, but there was no multilateral institutions. So let's be clear. International cooperation is not naivete. It is hard-headed pragmatism. In a world where there's leap borders, isolation is an illusion. No country can stop a pandemic alone. No army can halt rising temperatures. No algorithm can reveal trust once it is broken. These are global stress tests of our system, our solidarity, and our resolve. I'm convinced we can pass these tests, and we must. Because people everywhere are demanding something better, and we owe them a system worthy of their trust and a future worthy of their dreams. And so we must make the choice, an active choice, to reaffirm the imperative of international law, to reassert the centrality of multilateralism, to reinforce justice and human rights, and to recommit to the principles that gave rise to our organization, and to the promise contained in its first words, we the peoples. Excellencies, the choices we face are not part of an ideological debate. They are a matter of life and death for millions. As I scan the global landscape, we must make 5 critical choices. First, we must choose peace rooted in international law. Peace is our first obligation. Yet today, wars rage with a barbarity we vowed never to allow. Too often, the Charter is brandished when convenient and trampled when not. But the Charter is not optional. It is our foundation. And when the foundation cracks, everything built upon fractures. Around the world, we see countries acting as if the rules don't apply to them. We see humans treated as less than human, and we must call it out. Impunity is the mother of chaos, and it has spawned some of the most atrocious conflicts of our times. In Sudan, civilians are being slaughtered, starved, and silenced. Women and girls face unspeakable violence. There is no military solution. I urge all parties, including those in this hall, end the external support that is fueling this bloodshed. Push to protect civilians, because the Sudanese people deserve peace, dignity, and hope. In Ukraine, relentless violence continues to kill civilians, destroy civilian infrastructure, and threaten global peace and security. I commend recent diplomatic efforts by the United States and others. We must work for a full ceasefire and a just, lasting peace in accordance with the Charter, UN resolutions, and international law. In Gaza, the horrors are approaching a third monstrous year. They are the result of decisions that defy basic humanity. The scale of death and destruction are beyond any other conflict in my years as Secretary General. The International Court of Justice has issued legally binding provisional measures in the case named Application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the Gaza Strip. Since then, a famine has been declared and the killing has intensified. The measures stipulated by the ICJ must be implemented fully and immediately. Nothing can justify the horrific Hamas terror attacks of October 7 and the taking of hostages, both of which I have repeatedly condemned. And nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people and the systematic destruction of Gaza. We know what is needed. Permanent ceasefire now. All the hostages released now. Full humanitarian access now. And we must not relent in the only viable answer to sustainable Middle East peace, a two-state solution as so eloquently reaffirmed yesterday. We must urgently reverse dangerous trends on the ground. Relentless settler expansion and violence and the looming threat of annexation must stop. Everywhere, from Haiti to Yemen, to Myanmar and the Sahel and beyond, we must choose peace anchored in international law. The past year has brought glimmers of hope, including the ceasefire between Cambodia and Thailand, and the agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia brokered by the United States. But far too many crises continue unchecked. Impunity prevails, lawlessness is a contagion, it invites mayhem and risks a nuclear free-for-all. When accountability shrinks, graveyards grow. When UN staff and facilities are attacked, violating legal obligations, so too is the core of our ability to serve and deliver. The Security Council must live up to its responsibilities. It must be more representative, more transparent, and more effective. And beyond crisis response, we must tackle the injustices that ignite conflict: exclusion, inequality, impunity, and corruption. The surest way to silence the guns is to raise the volume for justice. Real security is born of fairness and opportunity for all. Excellences, cela m'amène au deuxième point.
This leads me to my second point. We must choose human dignity and human rights.
Les droits humains ne sont pas
Human
un ornement
rights
de
are
la
not
paix.
an ornament
Ils en
of
sont le
peace,
socle.
they're its bedrock.
Les droits humains, sociaux,
Human rights,
économiques,
economic, social,
civiques
cultural,
et
political,
culturels
and civil
sont
are
universels,
universal,
indivisibles
indivisible,
et
and
interdépendants.
interdependent.
Choisir les droits,
Choosing
c'est
rights
plus que des
means
paroles.
more than
C'est
words.
choisir la justice
It
plutôt que le
means choosing
silence.
justice over
C'est
silence.
préserver la liberté
It means
et l'espace
protecting
civique.
freedom and civic space.
Faire avancer l'égalité pour
Advancing
les femmes et
equality
les
for
filles.
women and girls.
Combattre le racisme
Confronting
et la
racism and
discrimination
discrimination
sous toutes leurs
in all
formes.
its forms.
Protéger les défenseurs des
Protecting
droits
human
humains,
rights
les
defenders,
journalistes
journalists,
et la liberté
and freedom of
d'expression,
speech.
et garantir les droits
And
des réfugiés et
upholding
des
the rights
migrants
of refugees and
afin que la
migrants
mobilité
so
soit
that
sûre
mobility is
et
safe
conforme
and
au
in
droit
accordance with
international.
international law.
Les droits humains sont un
Human
combat
rights
quotidien,
are a daily
en
battle,
ligne comme hors
online
ligne.
and offline.
Ils exigent de la
They
volonté
require
politique,
political will.
mais la dignité ne se
But
résume
dignity
pas à la
is not only
protection des droits.
about the protection of
Elle
rights,
exige pleinement concrétiser ces droits
about
grâce
rights
à un
fulfilled
développement
through
inclusif
inclusive
et
and
résilient.
resilient development.
Des droits qui mettent fin à la
Rights that
pauvreté
put an end
et à la
to
faim.
poverty and hunger.
Des droits qui ouvrent
Rights
de la
that
voie de
open
l'éducation,
doors
de la
to
santé
education,
et des
health
opportunités.
and opportunity.
Les objectifs de
The
développement
Sustainable
durable
Development
sont
Goals
notre feuille
are
de
our
route
shared
commune
roadmap
pour
for
concrétiser ces
achieving
droits.
these rights.
Mais pour avancer sur
But
cette
in order
voie,
to make
il faut
progress
du
down this
carburant.
road, we need
Ce
fuel.
carburant, c'est le
And
financement,
that fuel is
et nous savons ce qu'un
finance.
développement bien mené peut
We've seen
accomplir.
what development done right can
Au
deliver.
cours de la dernière
In the past
décennie,
decade,
des millions de personnes
millions
supplémentaires ont
more have
accédé à
gained access to
l'électricité,
electricity,
à des solutions de cuisson
clean
propres
cooking
et à
solutions,
l'Internet.
and to the
Le
internet.
mariage des enfants
Child marriage
recule,
is in retreat.
la représentation des femmes
Women's
avance,
representation is
mais les
growing,
coupes dans l'aide au
but cuts
développement
to aid
font des
are wreaking
ravages.
havoc.
Pour un grand nombre de personnes,
They are
elles
a death
représentent une
sentence
condamnation
for many.
à mort. Pour tant d'autres,
For so
un
many more,
avenir confisqué.
a stolen future.
C'est là
tout le
This
paradoxe
is
de
the
notre
great
époque.
paradox of our time.
Nous avons les solutions,
We have the
mais nous
solutions,
siphonnons le
but we
carburant
are
qui
siphoning
nous
off the
permettrait
fuel
d'avancer.
that would make it possible to make
Choisir la
progress.
dignité, c'est choisir
To
la
choose
justice
dignity, we
financière
must choose
et la
financial
solidarité.
justice and solidarity.
Nous devons réformer
We need
l'architecture
to
financière
reform the international
internationale
financial
afin
architecture
qu'elle soit au
so that it
service du
drives
développement
development
de
for all.
toutes et de tous. Avant que des banques multilatérales de
With bigger
développement
and
plus grandes et
bolder
plus
multilateral
audacieuses
development
qui
banks,
prêtent
lending more
davantage et mobilisent
and
plus de capitaux
mobilizing more
privés pour les
private
pays en
capital
développement,
for developing
avec des
countries,
mécanismes d'allègement de
with
dette plus
faster
rapides et
and
plus
fairer
justes,
debt relief
couvrant tous
mechanisms,
les pays en difficulté,
helping every country
y
in
compris
crisis,
ceux à revenus
including
intermédiaires.
middle-income countries.
Une protection des ressources nationales,
Protecting
en
natural
s'attaquant aux flux
resources
financiers
by
illicites,
tackling illicit financial
pratiques fiscales
flows
abusives
and abusive tax
qui volent aux
practices
sociétés
that rob
leur
societies
avenir.
of their future.
Et des institutions
And
financières
global
mondiales à
financial
l'image du monde
institutions that
d'aujourd'hui,
represent today's
avec
world,
une
with
participation
far
bien plus
greater
forte
participation
des pays
of
en développement
developing countries
dans sa composition et ses décisions.
in terms of their composition
Alors
and
faisons
their
le choix
decision making.
d'une
So,
économie
let
mondiale au
us
service
choose
de
a global
toutes
economy
et tous.
that works for everyone,
Faisons le
men
choix
and women.
des droits
Let
humains
us choose
et de la
human
dignité
rights and
et
dignity,
donnons-nous les moyens d'une
and
transition
let us
juste
equip
pour les
ourselves
peuples
with the
et la
means
planète.
to ensure a transition
Excelências,
for people and the planet.
Esto nos leva a la tercera opción.
Excellencies, this brings me to the
Debemos
third
elegir la
choice.
justicia
We must
climática.
choose climate justice.
La crisis climática
The
se está
climate crisis
acelerando,
is accelerating,
pero las soluciones
but
también.
so are the solutions.
El futuro de la energía
The clean
limpia
energy
ya
future
no es una
is no
promesa
longer a
lejana,
distant promise.
ya está aquí.
It's already here.
Ningún gobierno,
No government,
industria o
industry,
interés
or
especial
special interest
puede
can
detenerlo.
stop it.
Pero algunos lo
But
están
some are
intentando,
trying,
prejudicando a las
hurting
economías,
economies,
imponiendo
locking
precios
in
más
higher
altos
prices,
y
and
desperdiciando
squandering
una
a
oportunidad
historic
histórica.
opportunity.
Excellencies,
Fossil fuels are a losing bet. Last year, almost all new power capacity came from renewables, and the investment is surging. Renewables are the cheapest and fastest source of new power. They create jobs, drive growth, shield economies from volatile oil and gas markets, connect the unconnected, and can free us from the tyranny of fossil fuels. But not at today's pace. Clean energy investment remains uneven. 21st century grids and storage are not rolling out fast enough. And public subsidies, taking from taxpayer money, still flow to fossil fuels over clean energy by a factor of 9 to 1. Meanwhile, emissions, temperatures, and disasters keep rising. And those least responsible suffer the most. Science says limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees by the end of this century is still possible, but the window is closing. The International Court of Justice has affirmed the legal obligation of states. We must step up action and ambition, especially through strengthened national climate plans. Tomorrow, I will welcome leaders to announce new targets. The G20, the biggest emitters, must lead, guided by common but differentiated responsibilities. But all countries must step up and do more as we head to the UN Climate Conference in Brazil. By accelerating action in energy, forests, methane and industrial decarbonization. By defining a credible roadmap to mobilize $1.3 trillion annually in climate finance by 2035 for developing countries. By supporting just transitions, by doubling finance for adaptation to at least $40 billion this year, and rapidly deploying proven tools to unlock billions more in concessional finance. And by capitalizing the Loss and Damage Fund with significant contributions. All of these requires government, international financial institutions, philanthropies, civil society, and the private sector to work together. To provide fiscal space to developing countries and unlock new innovative sources of finance at scale, including solidarity levies
on high-emitting sectors and debt swaps. We have the solutions and tools, but we must choose climate justice and climate action. First, we must choose to put technology at the service of humanity. Artificial intelligence is rewriting human existence in real time, transforming how we learn, work, communicate, and what we can trust. And the question is not how to stop it, but how to steer it for the greater good. Technology must be our servant, not our master. It must promote human rights, human dignity, and human agency. Yet today, AI's advancement in outpacing regulation and responsibility and is concentrated in a few hands. And the risks are expanding to new frontiers, from biotech to autonomous weapons. We are witnessing the rise of tools for mass surveillance, mass social control, mass disruption, and even mass destruction. Tools that can drain energy, strain ecosystems, and intensify the race for critical minerals, potentially stoking instability and conflict. Yet, these technologies remain largely ungoverned. We need universal guardrails and common standards across platforms. No company should be above the law. No machines should decide who lives or dies. No system should be deployed without transparency, safety, and accountability. Last month, this Assembly took a historic step, establishing an independent international scientific panel on AI and an annual global dialogue on AI governance. Two new pillars of a shared architecture, connecting science with policy to bring clarity and foresight, enabling innovation to flourish while advancing our values and our rights, and ensuring governments, companies, and civil society can help shape common norms. We must build on these mechanisms and close the capacity gaps. All countries must be able to design and develop AI, not just to consume it. I have proposed voluntary financing options to build AI computing power, data, and skills in developing nations. No country should be locked out of the digital future or locked into systems it cannot shape or trust. And governments must lead with vision, and companies must act with responsibility. And we, the international community, must ensure that technology lifts up humanity. So let us choose cooperation over fragmentation, ethics over expediency, and transparency over opacity. Technology will not wait for us, but we can still choose what it serves. So let us choose wisely. Fifth and finally, to meet all these goals, we must choose to strengthen the United Nations for the 21st century. The forces shaking our world are also testing the foundations of the United Nations system. We are being hit by rising geopolitical tensions and divisions, chronic uncertainty, and mounting financial strain. But those who depend on the United Nations must not be made to bear the cost, especially now, when for every dollar invested to support our core work to build peace, the world spends $750 on weapons of war. This is not only unsustainable, it is indefensible. In this moment of crisis, the United Nations has never been more essential. The world needs our unique legitimacy, our convening power, our vision to unite nations, to bridge divides and confront the challenges before us. The Pact for the Future has shown your determination to build a United Nations that is stronger, more inclusive, and more effective. That is the logic and the urgency of our UN80 initiative. We are moving swiftly and decisively. I put forward concrete proposals, a revised budget for 2026 that strengthens accountability, improves delivery, and cuts costs, practical reforms to implement mandates more effectively and efficiently with greater impact, and ideas to spark a paradigm shift in the structure of the UN and how its parts work together. Most of these decisions rest with you, the Member States, and we will move forward in full respect of the established procedures. Together, let us choose to invest in a United Nations that adapts, innovates, and is empowered to deliver for people everywhere. Excellencies, my overriding message comes down to this. Now is the time to choose. It's not enough to know what the right choices are. I urge you to make them. I grew up in a world where choices were few. I was raised in the darkness of dictatorship, where fear silenced voices and hope was nearly crushed. Yet, even the bleakest hours, especially then, I discovered a truth that has never left me. Power does not reside in the hands of those who dominate or divide. Real power resides from people, from our shared resolve to uphold dignity, to defend equality, to believe fiercely in our common humanity and the potential of every human being. I learned early to persevere, to speak out, to refuse to surrender, no matter the challenge, no matter the obstacle, no matter the hour. We must and we will overcome. Because in a world of many choices, there is one choice we must never make, the choice to give up. We must never give up. That is my promise to you, for peace, for dignity, for justice, for humanity, for the world we know is possible when we work as one. I will never, ever give up. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General. The Assembly will now turn to agenda item 8, entitled General Debate. "80 years. Longer than the average human life. This anniversary of the United Nations should have been a moment of celebration. But this is not an ordinary year. Just look at the state of our world, as the Secretary General described. Thousands of orphans in Gaza are wandering around the rubble, eating sand, drinking contaminated water. 90-year-old women in Ukraine are hiding from drones, trapped in their homes instead of living their final years in peace. Children in Haiti, too afraid to walk to school, afraid they might be gunned down by gangs like their friends. And for every conflict and tragedy that seizes the headlines, there are so many more that are forgotten, lost to the news cycle. Like women in Democratic Republic of the Congo, shielding their daughters from armed groups, fearful they might be raped. And Rohingya children, spending their whole childhood in tattered tents, unable to remember what their home looks like. Faced with these realities, now is not the time to celebrate, but to ask ourselves, where is the United Nations? distinguished heads of state and government, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, people out there in the world watching us. Clearly, we have to do better. But what we should not let cynics allow to weaponize these failures, to argue that our institution is a waste of money, outdated, irrelevant. When the principles of the Charter are ignored, is it the UN that has failed? When tanks rolled into Ukraine, was it because Article 2 of the Charter is not clear enough about sovereignty and territorial integrity? When civilians, children, are killed in Gaza, is it humanitarian law at fault for failing to protect them? It's not the Charter which fails. It's not the UN as an institution which fails. The Charter, our Charter, is only as strong as member states' willingness to uphold it, and their willingness to hold to account those who violate it. Excellencies, yes, our world is in pain. Yes, we have failures. But imagine how much worse would it be without the United Nations? Would a single person be better off without it? Without UNICEF, 26 million children would not have received an education. Without the World Food Programme, nearly 125 million people would have lacked life-saving food assistance. Without the World Health Organization, over 1 billion vaccines would not have been supplied. Sometimes we could have done more, but we cannot let this dishearten us. If we stop doing the right thing, evil would prevail. This 80th session is not about big celebrations. It's about finding the resolve not to give up, the resolve to be better together, just as our predecessors did 8 decades ago. This institution was born in a world on fire and desperate for reprieve. 750 million, nearly a third of humanity back then, still under colonial rule. 2 world wars in a generation, 70 million dead. The horrors of the Holocaust revealed to our collective shame. This was a generation that knew almost nothing but suffering and despair. The signing of the Charter in 1945 gave hope to millions, gave us a North Star that guided our path from the ashes of war, helped guide nations from colonial rule into independent states, helped end apartheid. Across the decades, the United Nations has been a compass pointing toward peace, humanity, and justice. We have not always succeeded, but the story of this institution is not a story of easy victories. It's a story of falling and rising, of pulling ourselves and each other back up and trying harder. We gather here for the 80th time, not for empty celebration, not out of ritual, not to hear our own voices. We gather to prove that this institution matters, and that through this institution, every nation represented here, no matter how big or small, can summon again the strength and unity first shown in San Francisco 80 years ago. The courage and resolve of world leaders who, even while some called them back then naive, believed they could build a better world from the wreckage of the old. They showed then what true leadership is. It's not about imposing your will or putting others down. True leadership is about lifting others up, not out of altruism, but for a mutual benefit, and even out of our self-interest. Because as our founders and every architect of peace since then has understood, helping others is what makes ultimately our own countries stronger. Could any state have faced the global pandemic alone? The virus did not have any passport. We were only able to solve it at the end with the support of the World Health Organization. The climate crisis does not stop at borders. CO2 emissions anywhere affect people everywhere. Even the wealthiest cities in the world cannot shield themselves from wildfires. And imagine coming here by plane. How safe would you feel to step into the next airplane if there were no International Civil Aviation Organization anymore, which is responsible for setting safety regulations for 5 billion passengers each year? How comfortable would you be with your children using the internet while AI is uncontrolled and unchecked? As the lines between what is real and fake start to blur. In this globalized, digitalized world, we work together or we suffer alone. Excellencies, the theme of this milestone session and the high-level week is therefore better together. 80 years and more for peace, development, and human rights. Will living up to that be easy? No. But this hall was not built for easy times. It was built to come together to confront the hardest topics. This session is a session where the high-level week is about resolving differences. We showed some of it yesterday already. But even the House of Dialogue and Diplomacy needs a renovation. That is why the UN80 initiative and the wider reform process are not luxuries, but necessities. We are literally now at a crossroads, a make it or break it moment, politically, financially. Therefore, we have to deliver a United Nations that is agile, cost-effective, and fit for purpose. Member States have to give the Secretary General and this process their full support, because reform cannot stop in New York. It must carry through to every capital. That includes delivering the Pact for the Future and accelerating progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, this is not about charity. It's about addressing the core purposes of this institution, about strengthening our foundations across all 3 pillars: peace and security, human rights, and sustainable development. They are inseparable. Leaving hundreds of millions trapped in extreme poverty, vulnerable to crisis, and denied their human rights is not only a moral failure, it's a recipe for global unrest, terrorism, and the tragic waste of humanity's greatest resource, its people. Put it simply, without the SDGs, there cannot be lasting peace. Excellencies, our future as an institution will also be shaped by the selection of the next Secretary General. And here we must pause and reflect. In nearly 80 years, this organization has never chosen a woman for that role. One might wonder how out of 4 billion potential candidates, there could not be found a single one. Of course, the choice rests with member states. But those of you having been there yesterday celebrating Beijing one strong female leader after the other from all our continents. Like 80 years ago, we are standing at a crossroads. And it's up to us, to every single member state, to live up to the same leadership as your predecessors did, to act when action is needed, to uphold the principles of our Charter, to be better together, to show the people around the world that this United Nation is there, today, tomorrow, and for the next 8 decades. Because, after all, it's the life insurance for every country. Before giving the floor to the first speaker for this morning, I would like to remind member states that the list of speakers for the general debate has been established on the agreed basis that statements should be no longer than 15 minutes to enable all the speakers to be heard at a given meeting. Within this time frame, I would like to appeal to speakers to deliver their statements at a reasonable pace so that interpretation into the other official languages may be provided properly. I would also like to draw your attention to the decision taken by the Assembly at previous sessions, namely that the practice of expressing congratulations inside the Assembly Hall after speech has been delivered is strongly discouraged. After delivering their statements from the rostrum, speakers are invited to exit the hall through room JA200, located behind the podium, before returning to their seats. May I take it that the Assembly agrees to proceed in this manner? It's so decided. Finally, I should like to draw the attention of member states that during the general debate, official photographers are in the room and will take official photographs of all speakers by the Department of Global Communications. Members interested in obtaining these photographs are requested to contact the Photo Library of the United Nations. By this, the Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, President of the Federative Republic of Brazil. I request the protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Annalena Berpidato, Mr. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, dear heads of state and government, and representatives of the member states gathered here. This should be a time to celebrate the United Nations. Created at the end of the war, the UN symbolizes the highest expression of the aspiration for peace and prosperity. Today, however, the ideals that inspired its founders in San Francisco are under threat as never before in their history. Multilateralism is at a new crossroads. The organization's authority is in check. We are witnessing the consolidation of an international order marked by repeated concessions to power play, attacks on sovereignty, arbitrary sanctions, and unilateral interventions are becoming the rule. evidente
There
paralelo
is a clear
entre a crise
parallel
do
between the
multilateralismo e o
multilateralism
enfraquecimento
crisis
da
and the weakening
democracia.
of democracy.
O autoritarismo se fortalece
Authoritarianism is
quando nos
strengthened
omitimos
when we
frente à
fail to
arbitrariedade.
act in the face of
Quando a
arbitrary
sociedade
acts.
internacional
When the international society
vacila na defesa da
falters
paz,
in defending
da
peace,
soberania e do
sovereignty,
direito,
and the rule
as
of law,
consequências são
the
trágicas.
consequences are
Em
tragic
todo o mundo,
throughout the world.
forças antidemocráticas
Anti-democratic
tentam
forces
subjugar
are trying to
as
subjugate
instituições e
institutions
sufocar
and
as
stifle
liberdades.
freedoms.
Cultua a violência,
They worship violence,
exalta a
praise
ignorância,
ignorance,
atuam como
act
milícias
as physical
físicas e
and
digitais
digital militias,
e cerceiam a
and
imprensa.
restrict the press.
Mesmo sob ataque sem
Even
precedentes,
under an
o Brasil
unprecedented
optou
attack,
por
Brazil
resistir
chose to
e
resist
defender sua
and defend its
democracia
democracy.
reconquistada há
Regained
40 anos
40
pelo seu
years
povo
ago by
depois
its
de
people,
2 décadas de
after
governo
2 decades
ditatorial.
of dictatorial government.
Não há justificativa
There
para
is
as
no
medidas
justification
unilaterais
for
e
unilateral
arbitrárias
and
contra nossas
arbitrary measures
instituições e nossa
against our
economia.
institutions and our
A
economy.
agressão contra a independência do
The
poder
aggression
judiciário
against the
é
independence of the
inaceitável.
judiciary branch of power
Esta
is
ingerência
unacceptable.
em
This
assuntos internos
interference in domestic
conta com o
affairs
auxílio de uma
is
extrema-direita
aided by a
subserviente e
subservient
saudosa
far-right
de antigas
who is
hegemonias.
nostalgic of past
Falsos
hegemonies. False
arquiteta
patriots
e promove
plan and
publicamente
publicly promote
ações contra o
actions
Brasil.
against Brazil.
Não há pacificação com
Cannot
impunidade.
be achieved with
Há poucos
impunity.
dias,
A few days
e
ago,
pela primeira
and for the
vez em
first time in
525 anos de nossa
525
história,
years of our
um
history,
ex-chefe de
a
Estado
former head of state
foi condenado
was
por atentar
convicted
contra
of
o Estado
attacking the
democrático de
democratic
direito.
rule of law.
Foi
He
investigado,
was investigated,
indiciado e julgado
indicted, trialed,
e
and held
responsabilizado pelos
accountable
seus atos
for his
em um
actions
processo
in a
minucioso.
meticulous process.
Teve amplo direito de defesa,
He has the
prerrogativa
right to
que as
defend himself for
ditaduras
security,
negam
a
às suas
prerogative that
vítimas.
dictatorships deny to
Diante
their
dos
victims
olhos do mundo,
before the eyes of the
O Brasil
world.
deu um recado a
Brazil
todos os
sent a
candidatos
message to all
autocratas
aspiring
e aqueles que os apoiam.
autocrats and those who
Nossa
support them.
democracia
Our
e
democracy,
nossa
our
soberania
sovereignty
são
are
inegociáveis.
non-negotiable.
Seguiremos como
We will
nação
continue
independente
as an
e como
independent
povo
nation
livre
and as
de
a people
qualquer tipo de
free
tutela.
from any type of guardianship.
Democracias sólidas,
Sound
além
democracies
do
go
ritual
beyond
eleitoral.
the electoral ritual.
seu vigor
Its strength
pressupõe a redução das
presupposes the
desigualdades,
reduction of
a garantia
inequalities,
dos direitos
the
mais
guarantee of the
elementares,
most basic
a
rights,
alimentação,
food,
a segurança,
safety,
o trabalho,
work,
a moradia,
housing,
a educação
education,
e a
and
saúde.
health.
A democracia falha
Democracy
quando as
fails
mulheres ganham
when
menos que
women
os homens
earn less than
ou
men
morrem pelas
or
mãos de
die
parceiros
at
e
the hands
familiares.
of partners and family
Ela
members.
perde
It
quando
loses
fecha suas
when it
portas
closes its
e
doors
culpa migrantes
and
pelas
blames
mazelas do
migrants
mundo.
for the world's ills.
A pobreza
Poverty
é tão
is
inimiga
as
da
much
democracia
an enemy of
quanto o
democracy
extremismo.
as extremism.
Por isso,
Therefore,
foi com orgulho
we were
que
proud to
recebemos
receive
da FAO a
confirmation from
confirmação de que o
FAO
Brasil
that Brazil
voltou a
has
sair do
once
mapa
again
da
left
fome
the hunger
este
map
ano de
this
2020.
year, 2025.
Mas no mundo,
But in the
ainda há
world,
670
there are
milhões
still
de pessoas famintas
670
e
million hungry
cerca de
people
2
and
bilhões e
about
300 milhões
2.3 billion
enfrentam insegurança
face
alimentar.
food insecurity.
A única guerra
The only
que
war
todos podem
of
sair
which
vencedores.
everyone
É
can
que
emerge
travamos
victorious
contra a
is the
fome
one
e a
we
pobreza.
wage against hunger and
Esse é o
poverty.
objetivo da Aliança
This is the
Global
goal of the
que
global
lançamos no
alliance we
G20
launched
e que já conta
at the
com o apoio de
G20 and which has the
103
support
países.
of 103
A
countries.
comunidade
The
internacional
international community
precisa rever
needs to
suas
revise
prioridades,
its priorities,
reduzir os gastos com
reduce
guerras
arms
e
spending,
aumentar a ajuda
and
ao
increase
desenvolvimento.
development aid.
Aliviar o serviço
Relieve
da
the
dívida
service
externa
of the
dos
foreign
países mais
debt
pobres,
of the poorest
sobretudo os
countries, above
africanos,
all African
e
nations,
definir
and
padrões
set
mínimos de
minimum
tributação
global
global
tax standards
para que os super
so
ricos
that the super
paguem mais
rich
impostos
pay
que
more
os
taxes
trabalhadores.
than workers.
A democracia também se
Democracy
mede
is
pela
also
capacidade
measured by
de
the
proteger
ability
as
to protect
famílias e a
families
infância.
and the childhood.
As plataformas digitais
Digital platforms
trazem
offer
possibilidade de nos
possibilities for
aproximar
us to come
como
together
jamais
in
havíamos
ways we
imaginado,
never imagined.
mas têm sido usadas
But they
para
have been
semear
used for
intolerância,
sowing
misoginia,
intolerance,
xenofobia
misogyny,
e desinformação.
xenophobia and
A internet
misinformation. The internet
não pode ser terra
cannot
sem
be a
lei.
land of
Cabe ao poder
lawlessness.
público proteger
It's
os
up
mais
to
vulneráveis.
governments to protect the most
Regular
vulnerable.
não é
Regulating
restringir
does
a
not
liberdade de
mean
expressão.
restraining
É
freedom
garantir
of
que
expression.
o que
It's
já é
about
ilegal
ensuring
no mundo real
that what is
seja
already
tratado assim
illegal in the
também
real
no
world is
ambiente
treated
digital,
the
no
way in
ambiente
the virtual
virtual.
environment.
Ataques à
Attacks
regulação
on regulation
serve para encobrir
serve to
interesses
cover up
escusos
hidden
e dar
interests
guarida a
and
crimes como
provide
fraudes,
shelter for
tráfico de
crimes
pessoas,
such
pedofilia
as fraud,
e
human
investidas
trafficking,
contra a democracia.
pedophilia, and attacks against
O
democracy.
parlamento brasileiro,
The Brazilian parliament
corretamente,
was right
apressou
to
sem
rush
abordar esse
this to
problema.
address this issue.
Com orgulho,
Last week,
promulguei na
I
última
proudly
semana
enacted
uma das leis mais
one of the
avançadas
world's
do
most
mundo
advanced laws
para
for the
a
protection
proteção
of
de
children and
crianças
adolescents
e adolescentes
in
na
the
esfera digital.
digital environment.
Também enviamos ao Congresso
Also, we
Nacional
sent draft bills
projeto de lei
to the National
para
Congress
fomentar a
to foster
concorrência nos
competition
mercados digitais
and digital
e para
markets and to
incentivar
encourage the
a instalação
installation
de data
of
centers
sustainable
sustentáveis.
data centers.
Para mitigar os
To
riscos da
mitigate
inteligência
the risks
artificial,
of artificial intelligence,
apostamos na
we are
construção de uma
committed to
governança
building
multilateral
multilateral
em linha
governance
com o
in
Pacto
line with the
Digital
global
Global aprovado neste
compact
plenário
that was
no
approved
ano
in this
passado.
plenary last year.
Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies and gentlemen, Your
Na América
Excellencies,
Latina e
in Latin
Caribe,
America and the Caribbean,
vivemos momento
we
de
are
crescente
experiencing a
polarização
time
e
of growing
instabilidade.
polarization and instability.
Manter a região como zona de
Maintaining the
paz
region as a zone of
sempre foi
peace
e é a
is
nossa
and was
prioridade.
our priority.
Somos continente
We
livre
are
de
a
armas de
continent
destruição em
free
massa,
of weapons of mass
sem conflitos
destruction,
étnicos ou
without
religiosos.
ethnic or
preocupante.
religious conflicts.
A
The
equiparação entre a
comparison between
criminalidade e o
crime
terrorismo.
and terrorism is
A forma
worrying.
mais eficaz
The most effective way
de combater o
to
tráfico de
combat
drogas
drug
é a
trafficking
cooperação
is to
para
cooperate
reprimir
to suppress
a lavagem de dinheiro
money
e
laundering
limitar o
and
comércio de
limit
armas.
arms trade.
Usar força
Using
letal
lethal
em
force
situações
in
que não
situations
constituem
that do not
conflitos armados
constitute armed
equivale
conflict is
a executar
tantamount
pessoas
to
sem
executing
julgamento.
people without trial.
Outras partes do
Other parts of the
planeta
planet
já testemunharam
already
intervenções que
witnessed
causaram danos maiores
interventions
do
that
que
cause
se
greater
pretendia
damage
evitar,
than intended,
com graves
with
consequências
serious
humanitárias.
humanitarian consequences.
A via do diálogo
The path
não
to
deve estar
dialogue must
fechada
not be
na
closed
Venezuela.
in Venezuela.
O Haiti
Haiti
tem direito a
has the
futuro
right
livre de
to a
violência.
violence
E é
free
inadmissível
future. And it is
que Cuba seja
unacceptable
listada
that
como
Cuba
país que
be
patrocina o
listed as a
terrorismo.
country that sponsors
No
terrorism.
conflito
And the
na
conflict
Ucrânia,
in Ukraine, in the
todos já
conflict in
sabemos que
Ukraine,
não
we
haverá
all
solução militar.
already know that there will be
O
no
recente encontro no
military
Alasca
solution. The
despertou
recent
a
meeting in
esperança de uma
Alaska
saída
raised
negociada.
hopes for a negotiated
É
way
preciso
out.
pavimentar
It's necessary to pave the
caminhos
way
para uma solução
for a
realista.
realistic
Isso
solution.
implica
This
levar em conta as
implies
legítimas
taking into
preocupações de
account
segurança
the
de todas as
legitimate
partes.
security concerns
A
of all
iniciativa
parties.
africana
The African
e o
Initiative
grupo de amigos da
and
paz,
the Friends
criado
for
por
Peace
China e
group
Brasil,
created by China
podem
and
contribuir
Brazil
para promover o
can
diálogo.
help promote dialogue
Nenhuma situação
and a diplomatic
é
solution.
mais
No
emblemática
situation
do
is
que o
more
uso
emblematic
desproporcional e
of the
ilegal
disproportionate
da
and
força
illegal
do
use
que a
of
da
force
Palestina.
that the one occurring in
Os
Palestine.
atentados terroristas
The terrorist
perpetrados
attacks
pelo Hamas
perpetrated by
são
Hamas are
indefensáveis sob qualquer
indefensible
ângulo.
from any
Mas
angle,
nada,
but nothing,
absolutamente
absolutely
nada,
nothing
justifica o
justifies
genocídio
the
em
ongoing
curso
genocide
em Gaza.
in Gaza. There,
Ali, sob toneladas de
under
escombros,
tons of rubble,
estão enterradas
are
dezenas
buried
de milhares
tens
de
of
mulheres e
thousands of
crianças
innocent
inocentes.
women and children.
Ali também estão sepultados o direito
We can see
internacional
that
humanitário
international
e
humanitarian
o
law and
mito
the
da
myth of
superioridade
ethical
ética do Ocidente.
exceptionalism of the West are
Este
also being
massacre
buried there.
não aconteceria
This massacre would not have
sem a
happened
cumplicidade
without
dos
the
que poderiam
complicity of
evitá-lo.
those who could have prevented
Em
it. In Gaza,
Fome é usada
hunger
como arma
is
de
used
guerra.
as a weapon of
E o
war,
deslocamento
and the
forçado de
forced
populações
displacement of
é
populations
praticado
goes on
impunemente.
unimpunished.
punished. I express my admiration to the Jews who, inside and outside Israel, oppose this collective punishment. The Palestinian people are at risk of disappearing. They will only survive with an independent state integrated to the international community. This is the solution defended by more than 150 UN members, reaffirmed yesterday here in this very plenary, but dared by a single veto. It is regrettable that President Mahmoud Abbas was prevented by the host country of occupying the Palestinian bench at this historical moment. The spread of this conflict to Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Qatar is fueling an unprecedented arms build-up. Madam President,
bombas e armas nucleares não vão nos proteger da crise climática. O ano de 2024 foi o mais quente já registrado. A COP30 em Belém, no Brasil, será a COP da verdade. Será o momento dos líderes mundiais provarem a seriedade de seu compromisso com o planeta. Sem ter o quadro completo das contribuições nacionalmente determinadas, a chamada NDC, caminharemos de olhos vendados para um verdadeiro abismo. O Brasil se comprometeu a reduzir entre 59% e 67% suas emissões, abrangendo todos os gases de efeito estufa em todos os setores da economia. Nações em desenvolvimento enfrentam a mudança do clima ao mesmo tempo em que lutam contra outros desafios. Enquanto isso, países ricos usufruem de padrão de vida obtido às custas de 200 anos de emissões de gás. Exigir maior ambição e maior acesso a recursos e tecnologias não é uma questão de caridade, é apenas uma questão de justiça. A corrida por minerais críticos essenciais para a transição energética não pode reproduzir a lógica predatória que marcou os últimos séculos. Em Belém, o mundo vai conhecer a realidade da Amazônia. O Brasil já reduziu pela metade o desmatamento na região nos 2 últimos anos. Erradicá-lo requer garantia condições dignas de vida para seus milhões de habitantes. Fomentar o desenvolvimento sustentável é o objetivo do Fundo Florestas Tropicais para sempre, que o Brasil pretende lançar para remunerar os países que mantêm suas florestas em pé. É chegado o momento de passar da fase da negociação
to move from the negotiation phase to the implementation stage. The world owes a lot to the regime created by the Climate Convention.
Mas é necessário trazer o combate à mudança do clima para o coração da ONU para que ela tenha a atenção que merece. Um conselho vinculado à Assembleia Geral, com força e legitimidade para monitorar compromissos, dará coerência à ação climática. Trata-se de um passo fundamental na direção de uma reforma mais abrangente da organização, que contemple também um Conselho de Segurança ampliado nas 2 categorias de seus membros. Poucas áreas retrocederam tanto como o sistema multilateral de comércio. Medidas unilaterais transformam em letra morta princípios basilares como a cláusula de inação mais favorecida. Desorganizam cadeia de valor e lançam a economia mundial em uma espiral perniciosa de preços altos e estagnação. É urgente refundar o OMC em bases modernas e flexíveis. Senhoras e senhores, este ano, o mundo perdeu 2 personalidades excepcionais. O ex-presidente do Uruguai,
President Pepe Mujica,
e o nosso querido
and
Papa
our dear
Francisco.
Pope Francis.
Ambos encarnaram como ninguém
embodied the
os
best
melhores valores
humanist
humanistas.
values like no
Suas
other.
vidas se
Their lives were
entrelaçaram com as
with
8
the 8
décadas de existência da
decades
ONU.
of the UN.
Se ainda estivesse
UN's
entre nós,
existence. If they were still among us,
provavelmente usariam
they would
esta
use this
tribuna
platform
para
to
lembrar
remember
que o autoritarismo,
that authoritarianism,
a degradação
environmental
ambiental e a
degradation, and
desigualdade
inequality
não são
are not
inexoráveis. Que
relentless.
os únicos derrotados
That the only
são os que
ones
cruzam os
defeated are
braços
those who
resignados.
stand idly by,
Que
resigned,
podemos vencer os falsos profetas e
resignate,
oligarcas
and
que
that we can
exploram
defeat the
o
false
medo
prophets
e
and
monetizam o
oligarchs
ódio.
who exploit fear and
que o
monetize
amanhã
hate, and that
é feito de
tomorrow
escolhas
is
diárias
made of daily
e é preciso
choices,
coragem
and it
de
takes
agir
courage
para
to
transformar.
act to transform it.
No futuro que o Brasil
In the future
vislumbra,
that Brazil
não há
envisions,
espaço
there
para a
is no
reedição
room
de
for the
rivalidades
reenactment
ideológicas
of
ou
ideological
esferas de
rivalries or spheres
A
of
confrontação
effort.
é
Confrontation
inevitável.
is not inevitable.
Precisamos de liderança
We
com
need
clareza
leaders
de
with
visão,
clear
que
visions
entendam que a
who
ordem
understand
internacional
that the
não
international
é
order
jogo
is
de
not a
soma zero.
zero-sum game.
O século
The
XXI
21st
será
century
cada
will
vez
be
mais
increasingly
multipolar. Para se
multipolar.
manter pacífico,
For it
não
to
pode
remain
deixar de ser
peaceful,
multilateral.
it cannot fail
O Brasil
fall
confere
to multilateral.
crescente importância à
Brazil
União
is
Europeia,
giving
à
increasing
União Africana,
importance to the European
à
Union, the
ASEAN,
African Union,
à CELAC,
ASEAN,
aos
CELAC,
BRICS e ao
BRICS,
G20.
and the G20.
A voz do
The
sul
voice of
global
the global
deve
South
ser
must
respeitada
be
e ouvida.
heard.
A ONU
The UN
tem hoje
The UN
quase
has
4
today
vezes
almost
mais
4
membros do que os
times more members
51
than
que estiveram
the
na
51
fundação.
who were at its
Nossa
foundation.
missão histórica
Our
é
historic
de torná-la
mission
novamente
is to make it once
portadora de
again a
esperança
barrier of
e
hope
promotora
and
da
a
igualdade
promoter
e da
of
paz,
equality,
do desenvolvimento
peace,
sustentável
sustainable
e da
development,
diversidade
diversity,
e da
and
tolerância.
tolerance.
Que Deus
May
nos
God
abençoe a
bless
todos
us
e muito
all.
obrigado.
And thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, the Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Donald Trump, President of the United States of America. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble. Hello, Madam First Lady. Thank you very much for being here. And Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, First Lady of the United States, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and world leaders. 6 years have passed since I last stood in this grand hall and addressed a world that was prosperous and at peace in my first term. Since that day, the guns of war have shattered the peace I forged on 2 continents. An era of calm and stability gave way to one of the great crises of our time. And here in the United States, 4 years of weakness, lawlessness, and radicalism under the last administration delivered our nation into a repeated set of disasters. 1 year ago, our country was in deep trouble, but today, just 8 months into my administration, we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, and there is no other country even close. America is blessed with the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation on the face of the earth. This is indeed the golden age of America. We are rapidly reversing the economic calamity we inherited from the previous administration, including ruinous price increases and record-setting inflation like we've never had before. Under my leadership, energy costs are down, gasoline prices are down, grocery prices are down, mortgage rates are down, and inflation has been defeated. The only thing that's up is the stock market, which just hit a record high. In fact, it hit a record high 48 times in the last short period of time. Growth is surging, manufacturing is booming. The stock market, as I said, is doing better than it's ever done. And all of you in this room benefit by that, almost everybody. And importantly, workers' wages are rising at the fastest pace in more than 60 years. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? In 4 years of President Biden, we had less than $1 trillion of new investment into the United States. In just 8 months since I took office, we have secured commitments and money already paid for $17 trillion. Think of it, 4 years, less than $1 trillion, 8 months, much more than $17 trillion is being invested in the United States, and it's now pouring in from all parts of the world. We've implemented the largest tax cuts in American history and the largest regulation cuts in American history, making this once and again the best country on earth to do business. And many of the people in this room are investing in America, and it's turned out to be an awfully good investment during this 8-month period. In my first term, I built the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had the best economy ever, history of the world. And I'm doing the same thing again, but this time it's actually much bigger and even better. The numbers far surpass my record-setting first term. On our southern border, we have successfully repelled a colossal invasion. And for the last 4 months, and that's 4 months in a row, the number of illegal aliens admitted and entering our country has been 0. Hard to believe, because if you look back just a year ago, it was millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, from prisons, from mental institutions, drug dealers. All over the world they came. They just poured into our country with the ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration. Our message is very simple. If you come illegally into the United States, you're going to jail, or you're going back to where you came from, or perhaps even further than that. You know what that means. I want to thank the country of El Salvador for the successful and professional job they've done in receiving and jailing so many criminals that entered our country. And it was under the previous administration that the number became record-setting, and they're all being taken out. We have no choice. And other countries have no choice because other countries are in the exact same situation with immigration. It's destroying your country, and you have to do something about it. On the world stage, America is respected again like it has never been respected before. You think about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 1 year ago, we were a laughingstock all over the world. At the NATO summit in June, virtually all NATO members formally committed to increase defense spending at my request from 2% to 5% of GDP, making our alliance far stronger and more powerful than it was ever before. In May, I traveled to the Middle East to visit my friends and rebuild our partnerships in the Gulf and those valued relationships with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE and other countries are now, I believe, closer than ever before. My administration has negotiated one historic trade deal after another, including with the United Kingdom, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and many, many others. Likewise, in a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, 2 of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. I ended 7 wars. And in all cases, they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, a vicious, violent war that was, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. It included all of them. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. And I did it in just 7 months. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier. Thank you very much. I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. That is the saving and stopping of these wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. I thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential. But it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action. Now, after ending all of these wars and also earlier negotiating the Abraham Accords, which is a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements. But for me, the real prize will be the sons and daughters who live to grow up with their mothers and fathers, because millions of people are no longer being killed in endless and unglorious wars. What I care about is not winning prizes, it's saving lives. We saved millions and millions of lives with the 7 wars. And we have others that we're working on, and you know that. Many years ago, a very successful real estate developer in New York, known as Donald J. Trump, I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. It would be beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction, which was much more expensive at the time, and which actually produced a far inferior product. And I realized that they did not know what they were doing when it came to construction, and that their building concepts were so wrong, and the product that they were proposing to build was so bad and so costly. It was going to cost them a fortune. And I said, and wait till you see the overruns. Well, I turned out to be right. They had massive cost overruns and spent between $2 and $4 billion on the building and did not even get the marble floors that I promised them. You walk on terrazzo. Do you notice that? As far as I'm concerned, frankly, looking at the building and getting stuck on the escalator, they still haven't finished the job. They still haven't finished. That was years ago. The project was so corrupt that Congress actually asked me to testify before them on the tremendous waste of money, because it turned out that they had no idea what it was, but they knew it was anywhere between $2 and $4 billion as opposed to $500 million with a guarantee. But they had no idea, and I said it cost much more than $5 billion. Unfortunately, many things in the United Nations are happening just like that, but on an even much bigger scale, much, much bigger. Very sad to see. Whether the UN can manage to play a productive role, I've come here today to offer the hand of American leadership and friendship to any nation in this assembly that is willing to join us in forging a safer, more prosperous world. And it's a world that we'll be much happier with. A dramatically better future is within our reach. But to get there, we must reject the failed approaches of the past and work together to confront some of the greatest threats in history. There is no more serious danger to our planet today than the most powerful and destructive weapons ever devised by man, of which the United States, as you know, has many. Just as I did in my first term, I've made containing these threats a top priority, starting with the nation of Iran. My position is very simple. The world's #1 sponsor of terror can never be allowed to possess the most dangerous weapon. That's why shortly after taking office, I sent the so-called Supreme Leader a letter making a generous offer. I extended a pledge of full cooperation in exchange for a suspension of Iran's nuclear program. The regime's answer was to continue their constant threats to their neighbors and U.S. interests throughout the region, and some great countries that are right nearby. Today, many of Iran's former military commanders, in fact, I can say almost all of them, are no longer with us. They're dead. And 3 months ago, in Operation Midnight Hammer, 7 American B-2 bombers dropped the 30,000-pound each bombs on Iran's key nuclear facilities, totally obliterating everything. No other country on earth could have done what we did. No other country has the equipment to do what we did. We have the greatest weapons on earth. We hate to use them. But we did something that for 22 years people wanted to do. With Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity demolished, I immediately brokered an end to the 12-day war, as it's called, between Israel and Iran, with both sides agreeing to fight no longer. As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Have to get that done. Have to get it done. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities, including October 7th, even while they refuse to release the hostages or accept a ceasefire. Instead of giving to Hamas and giving so much, because they've taken so much, they have taken so much. This could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now. Thank you. Thank you. As we have got to come together, and we will come together, got to get it done. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. We want all 20 back. We don't want 2 and 4. As you know, I got, along with Steve Witkoff and others that helped us, Marco Rubio, we got most of them back. We were involved in all of them. But I always said the last 20 are going to be the hardest, and that's exactly what happened. We have to get them back now. We don't want to get back 2, and then another 2, and then 1, and then 3, have this process. No, we want them all back, and we want the actually 38 dead bodies back too. Those parents came to me, and they want them back, and they want them back very quickly and very badly. As though they were alive, they want them. They want them every bit as much as if their son or daughter were alive. I've also been working relentlessly, stopping the killing in Ukraine. I thought that would be, of the 7 wars that I stopped, I thought that would be the easiest because of my relationship with President Putin, which had always been a good one. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. But you know, in war, you never know what's going to happen. There are always lots of surprises, both good and bad. Everyone thought Russia would win this war in 3 days, but it didn't work out that way. It was supposed to be just a quick little skirmish. It's not making Russia look good. It's making them look bad. No matter what happens from here on out, this was something that should have taken a matter of days, certainly less than a week. And they've been fighting for 3.5 years and killing anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 young soldiers, mostly soldiers, on both sides, every single week, from 5,000 to 7,000 dead young people, and some in cities, much smaller numbers, where rockets are shot, where drones are dropped. This war would never have started if I were president. This was a war that should have never happened. It shows you what leadership is, what bad leadership can do to a country. Look what happened to the United States, and look where we are right now in just a short period of time. The only question now is how many more lives will be needlessly lost on both sides. China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, then the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which would stop the bloodshed, I believe, very quickly. But For those tariffs to be effective, European nations, all of you are gathered here right now, would have to join us in adopting the exact same measures. I mean, you're much closer to the city. We have an ocean in between. You're right there. And Europe has to step it up. They can't be doing what they're doing. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while they're fighting Russia. It's embarrassing to them, and it was very embarrassing to them when I found out about it, I can tell you that. But they have to immediately cease all energy purchases from Russia. Otherwise, we're all wasting a lot of time. So I'm ready to discuss this. We're going to discuss it today with the European nations, all gathered here. I'm sure they're thrilled to hear me speak about it, but that's the way it is. I like to speak my mind and speak the truth. As we seek to reduce the threat of dangerous weapons today, I'm also calling on every nation to join us in ending the development of biological weapons once and for all. And biological is terrible, and nuclear is even beyond, and we include nuclear in that. We want to have a cessation of the development of nuclear weapons. We know, and I get to view it all the time. Sir, would you like to see? And I look at weapons that are so powerful that we just can't ever use them. If we ever use them, the world literally might come to an end. There would be no United Nations to be talking about. There would be no nothing. Just a few years ago, reckless experiments overseas gave us a devastating global pandemic. Yet despite that worldwide catastrophe, many countries are continuing extremely risky research into bioweapons and man-made pathogens. This is unbelievably dangerous. To prevent potential disasters, I'm announcing today that my administration will lead an international effort to enforce Biological Weapons Convention, which is going to be meeting with the top leaders of the world by pioneering an AI verification system that everyone can trust. Hopefully the UN can play a constructive role, and it will also be one of the early projects under AI. Let's see how good it is, because a lot of people are saying it could be one of the great things ever, but it also can be dangerous, but it can be put to tremendous use and tremendous good, and this would be an example of that. Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs to the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well. You have to do that because I see it. I'm not mentioning names. I see it, and I can call every single one of them out. You're destroying your countries. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody has ever, and nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out. It's not sustainable. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it. And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed, so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything. Where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, they should, in many cases, be immediately sent home. And while we will always have a big heart for places and people that are struggling and truly compassionate, answers will be given. We have to solve the problem, and we have to solve it in their countries, not create new problems in our countries. And we are very helpful to a lot of countries that are just not able to send their people anymore. They used to send them to us in caravans of 25,000, 30,000 people each. These massive caravans of people pouring into our country, totally unchecked and unvetted. But not anymore. According to the Council of Europe, in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, the number was 53% of the people in prisons were from places that weren't from where they are now. In Greece, the number was 54%, and in Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland, 72% of the people in prisons are from outside of Switzerland. When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid kindness, and that's what they did, they repaid kindness with crime, it's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you, I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. In America, we've taken bold action to swiftly shut down uncontrolled migration. Once we started detaining and deporting everyone who crossed the border and removing illegal aliens from the United States, they simply stopped coming. They're not coming anymore. We're getting a lot of credit, but they're not coming anymore. This was a humanitarian act for all involved, because on the trips up, thousands of people a week were dying. Women were being raped. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Raped, horribly beaten, raped. On the trip up, the journey up, it was a long walk. It was a long, arduous journey, indeed. And it was also a historic victory against human trafficking throughout the region. What we did was a victory, and we saved so many lives of people that wouldn't make the journey. That journey was loaded up with death. Loaded up with death. Dead bodies all along the roads of jungles to get up. They go through jungles, they go through areas so hot you couldn't breathe. They were dying of suffocation, areas so hot that you couldn't breathe. Dead bodies all over. By them not coming, we're saving tremendous numbers of lives. My people have done a fantastic job in doing what they did, and the American public agrees with it. I mean, I was very proud to see this morning I have the highest poll numbers I've ever had. Part of it is because of what we've done on the border. I guess the other part is what we've done on the economy. Joe Biden's policies empowered murderous gangs, human smugglers, child traffickers, drug cartels, and prisoners from all over the world. The previous administration also lost nearly 300,000 children. Think of that. They lost more than 300,000 children, little children, who were trafficked into the United States on the Biden watch, many of whom have been raped, exploited, and abused, and sold. Sold. Nobody talks about that. The fake news doesn't write about it. With many others, young children who are missing or dead. And we found a lot of these children, and we're sending them back, and we've been sending them back to their parents. They said, nobody knows who they are. They said, where do you come from? And they'll give us a country, and we'll find out, and we'll figure it out, and we'll bring them back to their homes. And the mother and father rush to the door, and their tears in their eyes. They can't believe that they're seeing their son or daughter, their little son or daughter again. We've done almost 30,000 of them so far. Any system that results in the mass trafficking of children is inherently evil. Yet that is exactly what the globalist migration agenda has done, and it's what it's all about. In America, those days, as you know, are over. The Trump administration is working, and we are continuing to work to track down the villains that are causing this problem, and also, as I said, to get back the 30,000 we've already returned. Now I think we're going to have another. We're going to find a lot. You're not going to find all of them. 300, more than 300,000. They're lost or they're dead. They're lost or they're dead because of the animals that did this. To protect our citizens, I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as and you see this, and you see it happening right before your eyes. Let's put it this way. People don't like taking big loads of drugs in boats anymore. There aren't too many boats that are traveling on the seas by Venezuela. They tend not to want to travel very quickly anymore. And we've virtually stopped drugs coming into our country by sea. We call them the water drugs. They kill hundreds of thousands of people. I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as foreign terrorist organizations, along with two bloodthirsty transnational gangs, probably the worst gangs anywhere in the world, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is from Venezuela, by the way. Such organizations torture, maim, mutilate, and murder with impunity. They're the enemies of all humanity. For this reason, we've recently begun using the supreme power of the United States military to destroy Venezuelan terrorists and trafficking networks led by Nicolas Maduro. To every terrorist thug smuggling poisonous drugs into the United States of America, please be warned that we will blow you out of existence. That's what we're doing. We have no choice. Can't let it happen. They're destroying. I believe we lost 300,000 people last year to drugs, 300,000. Fentanyl and other drugs. Each boat that we sink carries drugs that would kill more than 25,000 Americans. We will not let that happen. Energy is another area where the United States is now thriving like never before. We're getting rid of the falsely named renewables. By the way, they're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate. And they have to be rebuilt all the time, and they start to rust and rot. Most expensive energy ever conceived, and it's actually energy. You're supposed to make money with energy, not lose money. You lose money, the governments have to subsidize. You can't put them out without massive subsidies. And most of them are built in China, and I give China a lot of credit. They build them, but they have very few wind farms. So why is it that they build them and they send them all over the world, but they barely use them? You know what they use? Coal. They use gas. They use almost anything, but they don't like wind. But they sure as hell like selling the windmills. Europe, on the other hand, is a long way to go, with many countries being on the brink of destruction. because of the green energy agenda, and I give a lot of credit to Germany. Germany was being led down a very sick path, both on immigration, by the way, and on energy. They were going green, and they were going bankrupt. And the new leadership came in, and they went back to where they were, with fossil fuel and with nuclear, which is good. It's now safe. You can do it properly. But they went back to where they were, and they opened up a lot of different plants, energy-producing plants, and they're doing well. I give Germany a lot of credit for that. They've said this is a disaster, what's happening. They were going all green. All green is all bankrupt. That's what it represents. And it's not politically correct. I'll be very badly criticized for saying it, but I'm here to tell the truth. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm in New York City. I'm feeling a lot safer. Crime, we're getting crime down. And by the way, speaking of crime, Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was the crime capital of America. Now it's after 12 days, it's a totally safe city. Everyone's going out to dinner. They're going out to restaurants. Your wife can walk down the middle of the street with or without you. Nothing's going to happen. My people have done a fantastic job. And yes, I called in the National Guard, and the National Guard took care of business, and they weren't politically correct, but they took care of business. We got 1,700 career criminals out, brought them back to where they came from, the countries where they came from, or put them in jails. Washington, D.C. is now a totally safe city again, and I welcome you to come. In fact, we'll have dinner together at a local restaurant, and we'll be able to walk. We don't have to go by an armor-plated vehicle. We'll walk right over there from the White House. They've given up their powerful edge, a lot of the countries that we're talking about, in oil and gas, such as essentially closing the great North Sea oil. Oh, the North Sea, I know it so well. Aberdeen was the oil capital of Europe, and there's tremendous oil that hasn't been found in the North Sea. Tremendous oil. And I was with the Prime Minister I respect and like a lot, and I said, you're sitting with the greatest asset. They essentially closed it by making it so highly taxed that no developer, no oil company can go there. They have tremendous oil left, and more importantly, they have tremendous oil that hasn't even been found yet. And what a tremendous asset for the United Kingdom. And I hope the Prime Minister is listening, because I told it to him 3 days in a row. That's all he heard. North Sea oil, North Sea, because I want to see them do well. I want to stop seeing them ruining that beautiful Scottish and English countryside with windmills and massive solar panels that go 7 miles by 7 miles, taking away farmland. But we're not letting this happen in America. In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. He said that it will be irreversible, as any nuclear holocaust would be. This is what they said at the United Nations. What happened? Here we are. Another UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. You know, it used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world, but then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change, because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything. And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail. And if you don't stop people that you've never seen before, that you have nothing in common with, your country is going to fail. I'm the President of the United States, but I worry about Europe. I love Europe. I love the people of Europe. And I hate to see it being devastated by energy and immigration. This double-tailed monster destroys everything in its wake, and they cannot let that happen any longer. You're doing it because you want to be nice. You want to be politically correct, and you're destroying your heritage. They must take control strongly and immediately of the unmitigated immigration disaster and the fake energy catastrophe before it's too late. The carbon footprint is a hoax made up by people with evil intentions, and they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know, the carbon footprint was a big, big thing a few years ago. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747, and not a new one, an old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He'd talk about the carbon footprint, we must do so. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and he'd talk about, again, global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a con job. At extreme cost and expense, Europe reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. You cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice and much more, it's been totally wiped out and then some by a global increase of 54%. Much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense. You know, it's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable, and you have it too. But you know, we have a border, strong, and we have a shape, and that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air. We have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years. But the problem is that other countries, like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean. And the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge that. Same thing with garbage. In Asia, they dump much of their garbage right into the ocean. And over about a 1 week and 2 week journey, it flows right past Los Angeles. You've seen it. Massive amounts of garbage, almost too much to do anything about, flowing past Los Angeles, past San Francisco, and then somebody will get in trouble because he dropped a cigarette on the beach. The whole thing is crazy. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a fortune. They're making a fortune. European electricity bills are now 4 to 5 times more expensive than those in China, and 2 to 3 times higher than the United States. And our bills are coming way down. You probably see that our gasoline prices are way down. You know, we have an expression, drill,
nós reduzimos os custos de energia, porque nós faremos, como vamos fazer tudo isso, reduzir os custos de energia, e os custos diminuíram nos Estados Unidos. Por exemplo, se você olhar nos países em faturas de energia, nós não climatizamos. Mas nós, nos Estados Unidos, conseguimos usar eles e evitar aumento da temperatura, porque é muito caro também usar nada e ninguém usa isso.
The entire globalist concept of asking successful industrialized nations to inflict pain on themselves and radically disrupt their entire societies must be rejected completely and totally, and it must be immediate. That's why in America I withdrew from the fake Paris Climate Accord, where, by the way, America was paying so much more than every country. Others weren't paying. China didn't have to pay until 2030. Russia was given an old standard that was easy to meet, a 1990 standard. But for the United States, we're supposed to pay like $1 trillion. And I said, this is another scam. The fact is, the United States has been taken advantage of by the world for many, many years, but not any longer, as you probably noticed. I unleashed massive energy production and signed historic executive orders to hunt for oil, but we don't have to do much hunting because we have the most oil of any nation anywhere, oil and gas in the world. And if you add coal, we have the most of any nation in the world. Clean, I call it clean, beautiful coal. You can do things today with coal that you couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years. So I have a little standing order in the White House. Never use the word coal, only use the words clean, beautiful coal. Sounds much better, doesn't it? But we stand ready to provide any country with abundant, affordable energy supplies if you need them, when most of you do. We're proudly exporting energy all over the world. We're now the largest exporter. In the United States, we want trade and robust commerce with all nations, everybody. We want to help nations. We're going to help nations. But it must also be fair and reciprocal. The challenge with trade is much the same with climate. The countries that followed the rules, all their factories have been plundered. It's really sad to watch. They've been broken. They've been broken by countries that broke the rules. That's why the United States is now applying tariffs to other countries, and much as these tariffs were for many years applied to us, uncontrollably applied to us. We've used tariffs as a defense mechanism under the Trump administration, including my first term, where hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs were taken in. And by the way, we had the lowest inflation, and now we have very low inflation. The only thing different is that we have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into our country. But this is how we will ensure that the system works for everyone and is sustainable into the future. We're also using tariffs to defend our sovereignty and security throughout the world, including against nations that have taken advantage of former U.S. administrations for decades, including the most corrupt, incompetent administration in history, the sleepy Joe Biden administration. Brazil now faces major tariffs in response to its unprecedented efforts to interfere in the rights and freedoms of our American citizens and others, with censorship, repression, weaponization, judicial corruption, and targeting of political critics in the United States. I have a little problem saying this because I must tell you, I was walking in and the leader of Brazil was walking out. We saw him and I saw him, he saw me, and we embraced. And then I'm saying, can you believe I'm going to be saying this in just 2 minutes? But we actually agreed that we would meet next week. We didn't have much time to talk, like about 20 seconds. They were in retrospect, I'm glad I waited because this thing didn't work out too well. But we did talk. We had a good talk, and we agreed to meet next week, if that's of interest. but he seemed like a very nice man, actually. He liked me, I liked him. But if you, and I only do business with people I like. When I don't like them, I don't like them. But we had, at least for about 39 seconds, we had excellent chemistry. It's a good sign. But also in the past, Brazil, can you believe this, unfairly tariffed our nation, but now because of our tariffs, we are hitting them back, and we're hitting them back very hard. As president, I will always defend our national sovereignty and the rights of American citizens. So I'm very sorry to say this, that Brazil is doing poorly and will continue to do poorly. They can only do well when they're working with us. Without us, they will fail, just as others have failed. It's true. Next year, the United States will celebrate the 250th anniversary of our glorious independence, a testament to enduring power and American freedom and spirit. We will also be proudly hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and shortly thereafter, the 2028 Olympics, which is going to be very exciting. I hope you all come. I hope that countless people from all over the globe will take part of these will be great celebrations of liberty and human achievement, and that together we all can rejoice in the miracles of history that began in July 4th, 1776, when we founded the light to all nations. And it's something really that an amazing thing came out of that date. It's called the United States of America. In honor of this momentous anniversary, I hope that all countries who find inspiration in our example will join us in renewing our commitment, values, and those values really that we hold so dear. Together, let us defend free speech and free expression. Let us protect religious liberty, including for the most persecuted religion on the planet today. It's called Christianity. And let us safeguard our sovereignty and cherish qualities that have made each of our nations so special, incredible, and extraordinary. In closing, I just want to repeat that immigration and the high cost of so-called green renewable energy is destroying a large part of the free world and a large part of our planet. Countries that cherish freedom are fading fast because of their policies on these two subjects. You need strong borders and traditional energy sources if you are going to be great again. Whether you have come from north or south, east or west, near or far, every leader in this beautiful hall today represents a rich culture, a noble history, and a proud heritage that makes each nation majestic and unique, unlike anything else in human history or any other place on the face of the earth. From London to Lima, from Rome to Athens, from Paris to Seoul, from Cairo to Tokyo and Amsterdam to right here in New York City, we stand on the shoulders of the leaders and legends, generals and giants, heroes and titans who won and built our beloved nations, all of our nations, with their own courage, strength, spirit, and skill. Our ancestors climbed mountains, conquered oceans, crossed deserts, and trekked over wide open plains. They charged into thunderous battles, plunged into grave dangers, and they were soldiers and farmers and workers and warriors and explorers and patriots. They built towns into cities, tribes into kingdoms, ideas into industries, and small islands into mighty empires. You're a part of all of that. They were champions for their people who never gave up and who never, ever gave in. Their values defined our national identities. Their visions forged our magnificent destiny. Everybody in this room is a part of it in your own way. Each of us inherits the deeds and the myths, the triumphs, the legacies of our own heroes and founders who so bravely showed us the way. Our ancestors gave everything for homelands that they defended with pride, with sweat, with blood, with life, and with death. Now the righteous task of protecting the nations that they built belongs to each and every one of us. So together let us uphold our sacred duty to our people and to our citizens. Let us protect their borders, ensure their safety, preserve their cultures, treasure, and traditions, and fight for their precious dreams and their cherished freedoms. And in friendship and really a beautiful vision, let us all work together to build a bright, beautiful planet, a planet that we all share, a planet of peace and a world that is richer, better, and more beautiful than ever before. That can happen. It will happen. It will happen, and I hope it can happen and start right now, right at this moment. We'll turn it around. We're going to make our countries better, safer, more beautiful. We're going to take care of our people. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. God bless the nations of the world. Thank you very much. Bye.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the United States,
Please be seated.
Please be seated.
Excellencies, could you please take your seats in due respect to the next speakers? The second row, could you please take your seat right now? Please take a seat now. With due respect to the next speakers, I would kindly ask to gentlemen in the left row, please take your seats. We will continue. Excellencies, as we are receiving queries, I would like to assure you that don't worry, the UN teleprompters are working perfectly. And by this technical note, I would like to call on the next speaker. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Prabowo Subianto, President of the Republic of Indonesia. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Her Excellency Madame Annalena Baerbock, President of the United Nations General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Moses Abelian, Under-Secretary General for General Assembly and Management, Excellencies, Heads of States, Heads of Governments, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great honor for me to stand in this august General Assembly Hall among leaders and representatives who represent almost all of humanity. We differ in race, religion, and nationality. Yet we gather together today as one human family. We are here first and foremost as fellow human beings, each created equal, endowed with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The words of the United Nations Declaration of Independence have inspired democratic movements across continents, including the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Mexican Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, and Indonesia's own struggle and journey to freedom. It also gave birth to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations in 1948. All men are created equal was the creed that opened the way to unprecedented global prosperity and dignity. And yet, in our own era of scientific and technological triumphs, an era capable of ending hunger, poverty, and environmental ruin, we also continue to face today grave dangers, challenges, and uncertainties. Human folly, fueled by fear, racism, hatred, oppression, and apartheid, threatens our common future. My country knows this pain. For centuries, Indonesians lived under colonial domination, oppression, and slavery. We were treated less than dogs in our own homeland. We Indonesians know what it means to be denied justice and what it means to live in apartheid, to live in poverty, and to be denied equal opportunity. We also knew what solidarity can do. In our struggle for independence, in our fight to overcome hunger, disease, and poverty, the United Nations stood with Indonesia and gave us vital assistance. Decisions made here based on human solidarity by the Security Council and this Assembly gave Indonesia independence, international legitimacy, opened doors, and supported our early development through the efforts of the United Nations Children's Fund, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, the World Health Organization, and many, many other United Nations institutions. And because of that, Indonesia today stands on the cusp of shared prosperity and greater equality and dignity. Madam President, Excellencies, our world today is driven by conflict, injustice, and deepening uncertainty. Every day we witness suffering, genocide, and blatant disregard for international law and human decency. In the face of these challenges, we must not give up. As the United Nations Secretary General said, we cannot give up. We cannot surrender our hopes or our ideals. We must draw closer, not drift apart. Together we must strive to achieve our hopes, our dreams. The United Nations was born from the ashes of the Second World War that claimed scores of millions of lives. It was created to secure peace, security, justice, and freedom for all. We remain committed to internationalism, to multilateralism, and to every effort that strengthens this great institution. Today, Indonesia is nearer than ever before to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals of ending extreme poverty and hunger. Because years ago, this very chamber chose to listen and uphold social and economic justice. we will never forget. And today, we must never be silent while Palestinians are denied that same justice and legitimacy in this very hall. Excellencies, Thucydides warned, the strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. We must reject this doctrine. The United Nations exist to reject this doctrine. We must stand for all, the strong and the weak. Might cannot be right. Right must be right. Indonesia today is one of the largest contributors to United Peacekeeping Forces. We believe in the United Nations. We will continue to serve where peace needs guardians, not with just words, but with boots on the ground. If and when the United Nations Security Council and this great assembly decide Indonesia is prepared to deploy 20,000 or even more of our sons and daughters to help secure peace in Gaza or elsewhere, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Libya, everywhere when the peace needs to be enforced, peace needs to be guarded, we are ready. We will take our share of the burden, not only with our sons and daughters, we are also willing to contribute financially to support the great mission to achieve peace by the United Nations. Madam President, Excellencies, I propose to this Assembly a message of hope and optimism, grounded in action and execution. Today, we heard the speech of Madam President, the President of the United Nations General Assembly. Yes, it is true what she said. Without the International Civil Aviation Organization, will we be here today? Will we sit in this great hall? Without the United Nations, we cannot be safe. No country can feel secure. We need the United Nations, and Indonesia will continue to support the United Nations. Even though we still struggle, but we know the world needs a strong United Nations. The world's population is growing. Our planet is under strain. Food, energy, and water insecurity haunt many nations. We choose to answer these challenges directly at home and to help abroad wherever we can. This year, Indonesia recorded the highest rice production and grain reserves in our history. We are now self-sufficient in rice, and we are starting now to export rice to other nations in need, including providing rice for Palestine. We are building resilient food supply chains, strengthening farmer productivity, investing in climate-smart agriculture to ensure food security for our children and for the children of the world. We are confident in a few years' time, Indonesia will be the granary of the world. As the world's largest island state, we testify before you that we are already experiencing the direct consequences of climate change, particularly the threat of rising sea levels. The sea level on the north coast of our capital city is increasing by 5 centimeters every year. Can you imagine in 10 years? Can you imagine in 20 years? For this, we are forced to build a giant seawall, 480 kilometers in length. It will take us maybe 20 years, but we have no choice. We have to start now. Therefore, we choose to confront climate change not by slogans, but by immediate steps. We are committed to meeting our 2015 Paris Agreement obligations. We aim to achieve net zero emission by 2060, and we are very confident we can achieve net zero emission much earlier. We aim to reforest more than 12 million hectares of degraded forest, to reduce forest degradation, to empower local communities with quality green jobs for the future. Indonesia is shifting decisively from fossil fuel-based development towards renewable-based development. From next year, most of our additional power generation capacity will come from renewables. Our goal is clear: to lift all of our citizens out of poverty and make Indonesia a hub for solutions to food, energy, and water security. Madam President, Excellencies, we live in a time when hatred and violence can seem to be the loudest voices. But beneath this loud noise lies a quieter truth, that every person longs to be safe, to be respected, to be loved, and to leave a better world to their children. Our children are watching. They are learning leadership, not from textbook, but from our choices. Today, still, a catastrophic situation in Gaza is unfolding before our eyes. At this very moment, the innocent are crying for help, are crying to be saved. Who will save them? Who will save the innocent? Who will save the old and women? Millions are facing danger at this very moment. As we sit here, they are facing trauma. They are facing irreparable damage to their bodies. They are dying of starvation. Can we remain silent? Will there be no answer to their screams? Will we teach them that the human family can rise to the challenge? Madam President, we must act now. Many speakers have said that. We must stand for a multilateral order where peace, prosperity, and progress are not the privilege of a few, but the right of all. With a strong United Nations, we can build a world where the weak do not suffer what they must, but live the justice that they deserve. Let us continue humanity's great journey of ideals, the selfless aspirations that created the United Nations. Let us use science to uplift, not use science to destroy. Let rising nations help others to lift themselves. I am convinced that the leaders of the great world civilizations of the West, of the East, of the North, of the South, leaders of America, Europe, of India, China, the Islamic world, the whole world, I am convinced they will rise to their role demanded by history. We are all hopeful that the leaders of the world will show great statesmanship, great wisdom, restraint, humility, overcome hate, overcome suspicion. Madam President, distinguished delegates, we are greatly heartened by the events of the last few days, where significant leading countries of the world have chosen to side with history, to choose the right side of history, the path of the moral high ground, the path of rectitude, the path of justice, the path of humanity, to shun hatred, to overcome suspicion, and to avoid the use of violence. The use of violence will beget violence. No one country can bully the whole community of the human family. We may be weak individually, but the sense of oppression, the sense of injustice has proven in the history of mankind that this sense of injustice, this sense of oppression will unite into a strong force that will overcome this oppression, that will overcome this injustice. To close, I would like to reiterate again Indonesia's complete support for the two-state solution in Palestine. We must have an independent Palestine, but we must also recognize, we must also respect, and we must also guarantee the safety and security of Israel. Only then we can have real peace, and no longer hate and no longer suspicion. The only solution is this two-state solution. Two descendants of Abraham must live in reconciliation, peace, and harmony. Arabs, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, all religions, we must live as one human family. Indonesia is committed to being part of making this vision a reality. Is this a dream? Maybe, but this is the beautiful dream that we must work together towards. Let us work towards this noble goal. Let us continue humanity's journey of hope, a journey started by our forefathers, a journey that we must complete. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om. Namo Buddhaya. Thank you very much. May God bless us all. May peace be upon us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Indonesia. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President of the Republic of Turkey. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Sayın Başkan,
Excellency
değerli
President of UNGA,
devlet ve hükümet başkanları,
Excellencies, Heads of State and Government,
Sayın Genel Sekreter,
Distinguished Secretary
kıymetli
General,
delegeler,
Distinguished
sizleri
Delegation Members,
şahsım ve milletim
on behalf
adına
of myself and
en
my
kalbi
nation, I
duygularımla
greet you all with
selamlıyorum.
most heartfelt feelings.
Birleşmiş Milletler
I wish
80.
for the
Genel
80th
Kurulu'nun
United
tüm
Nations
insanlık
General
için
Assembly to
hayırlara
bring
vesile
blessings to
olmasını
all humanity.
temenni ediyorum. İnsanlığın ortak vicdanını temsil
I'm
eden
deeply honored
bu
to
kürsüden
address you once again from this
sizlere
podium,
bir kez daha hitap
which
etmekten
represents the collective
büyük
conscience
bir
of
bahtiyarlık duyuyorum.
humanity.
Genel Kurul Başkanlığını tamamlayan
I congratulate
Sayın
Mr. Young,
Young'ı tebrik
who
ediyor.
has completed
Bu
his
görevi
term as
devralan
President of the General
Sayın
Assembly,
Berbok'a
and I wish
başarılar
success to
diliyorum.
Ms. Baerbock, who has
Konuşmamın hemen
taken
başında
over this position.
Filistin'in giderek artan sayıda ülke
At the outset
tarafından
of my
tanındığı
speech,
bir
I would like to
dönemde
first express my
Filistin
regret
Devlet
at the
Başkanı
absence today
Sayın
of the
Mahmut
President
Abbas'ın
of the State
bugün
of Palestine,
bizzat
Mahmut
aramızda
Abbas,
olamayışından
at a time when
duyduğum
Palestine
üzüntüyü
is being
ifade etmek istiyorum.
recognized by an increasing number of
Biz
countries.
bugün bu kürsüde
Today,
kendi
we stand here
vatandaşlarımızla
on this
birlikte
podium. I
sesi
stand here on
kısılmak
this
istenen
podium
Filistin
alongside
halkına
my
tercüman olmak
86
için
million
de
citizens,
bulunuyorum.
also for our
Filistin
Palestinian
devletini
brothers and
tanıyacağını
sisters
açıklayan
whose voices are
tüm
being silenced.
ülkelere teşekkür ediyor. Henüz bu kararı almayan
I'd like to
devletleri
thank all the
ise
countries
bir an
who
önce
announced that they
harekete
recognize the
geçmeye
state of
çağırıyorum.
Palestine, and I call
Sayın
on
Başkan,
all the other countries
değerli
who
üyeler,
have not done so yet
Birleşmiş
to do
Milletler
so, to
şartı
recognize
bundan
the state of
80 yıl
Palestine
önce
as soon as
San
possible.
Francisco'da imzalandı
Esteemed President,
ve
distinguished members,
24 Ekim
the United Nations Charter
1945'te
was signed in San
yürürlüğe
Francisco
girdi.
8 years ago and it
Birleşmiş
entered into
Milletler
force on
Kuruluş
October the
Şartı'nın
24th,
ilk
1945.
maddesinin ilk
I
kelimelerini
would like to recall here
burada
again the first
tekrar
words of the
hatırlatmak
first
isterim.
article of the UN Charter.
Birleşmiş Milletler'in amacı
The
uluslararası
purpose of
barış
the United
ve
Nations
güvenliği
is to maintain
korumaktır.
international peace and
Evet,
security.
bizler
Unquote.
bu salonda Birleşmiş
As
Milletler'in
we celebrate the 80th anniversary
80.
of the
yaşını
UN in
kutlarken
this hall, grave
dünyanın
events are
birçok bölgesinde
unfolding in many parts
kuruluş
of the world
şartının
that cast
ilk
a shadow
maddesinin
over the very
ilk
first
kelimelerine
words
gölge
of
düşürecek
the UN Charter's
vahim
opening
hadiseler yaşanıyor.
article.
Özellikle Gazze'de gözlerimizin önünde
Particularly in
700
Gaza,
günü
right
aşkın bir
before our very
süredir
eyes,
soykırım
genocide has been going
devam
on
ediyor.
for over
Biz
700 days
toplantı
now.
halindeyken dahi
Even as we
Gazze'de
gather here, as we
şu anda
speak now,
siviller
Israel is currently
katlediliyor.
massacring civilians in
Gazze'de
Gaza.
ölen sivillerin sayısı
The number of civilian
65
casualties
bini
in
geçti.
Gaza has surpassed
Enkaz altında
65,000.
kaç cenazenin olduğu
Unfortunately,
henüz
the number of
bilinmiyor.
people who are still trapped under the
Ölenlerin
rubble
20
is
binden
not yet
fazlası
known.
çocuk.
And more than 20,000
İsrail
of those who
tarafından
died
Gazze'de
were children.
son 23 aydır
For the last
her
23
saat
months,
evet
a
her
child
saat
has been
bir
murdered by
çocuk
Israel in
acımasızca
Gaza every
hayattan
hour. Yes,
kopartılıyor.
every hour.
Bunlar sayı değil dostlar.
These are not just figures,
Hepsi birer
dear
can,
friends. All
birer
of these, each one
masum
of
insan.
these is a
Şu anda
person, a
sadece
human being,
silahlarla
innocent
değil,
people. People are now being
açlık
killed not with
silahıyla da
weapons,
insanlar
but with the
öldürülüyor.
weapon of starvation.
21. yüzyılda medeni
In the
dünyanın
21st
bakışları
century,
altında
under the gaze of the
146
civilized
çocuk,
world, 428
428
people
kişi
died of starvation.
açlıktan
Out of
hayatını
those
kaybetti
428,
ve sayı her geçen gün
146
artıyor.
were children.
Şimdi
And
size
this number is increasing
Gazze'deki
every day.
günlük hayatı anlatan
Now,
bir fotoğraf
I will show you a
göstereceğim.
photo, which is a picture from daily life in
Birinci
Gaza.
fotoğraf
The first photo,
gördüğünüz gibi
as you see,
ellerinde
these are
leğenli
people.
kadınlar.
These are women
Lütfen
with
hepimiz
these cups that they are
elimizi
holding in
vicdanımıza
their
koyup
hands, cups
cevap
and
verelim.
buckets. Just
2025
feel your
yılında
conscience and answer
böyle
the
bir
following
gaddallığın
question.
makul bir sebebi
Can we possibly
olabilir
have a
mi?
reasonable reason
Fakat
for this
insanlık
brutality
adına
in
bu utanç
2025?
manzarası Gazze'de
This
23 aydır
shameful
her
picture
gün
in Gaza has
tekrar
been
ediyor.
unfolding and is being repeated
365
every day
kilometre
for
kare içinde
23
yaşayan
months now.
2,5 milyon
And
Gazze'li
there are
her
2.5
gün
million
yerinden
Gazans
ediliyor.
who live
Her
in
gün bir başka
365
bölgeye
square
göçe
kilometers. And every day
zorlanıyor.
what happens
Gazze'nin
is
sağlık
they are
altyapısı tamamen
being dragged from one
çökmüş
place
durumda.
to another. The
Doktorlar
healthcare
öldürüldü
infrastructure
ya
of
da
Gaza
gözaltına
is
alındı.
completely collapsed. Doctors
Ambulans
are,
söylüyorum.
with my heart
Henüz
bleeding here,
2-3
I'm telling you,
yaşındaki elleri,
innocent
kolları,
little ones,
bacakları
just
olmayan
2 or 3 years
masum
old,
yavrucuklar
without hands,
bugün maalesef
arms or legs,
Gazze'nin
have
olağan
become,
fotoğrafı haline
unfortunately,
gelmiştir.
a common sight to see in Gaza.
Buna hangi vicdan dayanır?
What kind of a human conscience can
Hangi vicdan
possibly
buna
bear this?
sessiz kalabilir?
Possibly.
Çocukların
How can
açlıktan,
one stay silent vis-a-vis
ilaçsızlıktan
this?
öldüğü bir
Where-
dünyada
in a world where
huzur olur
children
mu?
are dying of starvation and lack of
Hepimiz
medication, can we possibly have
anne
calm
babayız.
and peace? We all are
üzerine
parents.
titrediğimiz
We have
evlatlarımız,
children
torunlarımız
or
var.
grandchildren
Burada,
who we dearly cherish.
Amerika'da,
Here,
Avrupa'da,
say in
dünyanın her
America or
yerinde
in Europe, everywhere
bir
in the
çocuğun
world,
eline
when a
küçük
small
bir
rose
diken batsa,
thorn hurts a
anne
child's
babaların
hand,
yüreği yanıyor.
the hearts of
Ama
parents
Gazze'de
break. But in
çocukların
Gaza,
elleri,
children's
kolları,
hands, arms
bacakları
and legs are
anestezi
being amputated
yapılmadan
without
ampute ediliyor.
anesthesia.
Kimse kusura bakmasın ama
Now, I'm extremely
bu
sorry to say,
insanlığın
but this
dip noktası.
represents the lowest point of
İnsanlık
humanity.
tarihi son bir asırda
Human
böyle
history
bir vahşet
has not witnessed
görmemiş.
such bloodshed within the last century.
Her şey gözümüzün
All
önünde cereyan
of this
ediyor.
is happening before our very eyes.
Gazze'deki soykırım,
The genocide
medya,
in Gaza
sosyal
is
medya
being
aracılığıyla
broadcast
her an canlı olarak
live every
yayınlanıyor.
moment through the
İsrail,
media and social media.
Şu ana kadar Gazze'de
So far,
ulusal
Israel
ve
has
uluslararası
deliberately
basında
killed
çalışan
250
250
journalists
gazeteciyi
working in national and
kasıtlı
international
olarak
media in
öldürdü.
Gaza.
Gazze'ye tüm girişleri yasakladı.
And
Ama yine de
they
soykırımı
have closed
gizleyemedi.
all the entrance
Filistin
into Gaza,
topraklarında
but they still have not
devam
been able to
eden
cover up the genocide.
soykırıma her fırsatta
I
dikkatlerini çeken
wholeheartedly support
Genel
Secretary General
Sekreter
Guterres
Sayın
because he
Guterres'i
consistently draws
gönülden
attention to the
destekliyorum.
ongoing
Cesareti için
genocide
kendisini
in Palestinian
bir kez daha
territories, and I would
tebrik
like to once
ediyorum.
again congratulate him for his courage.
Ancak
But
Birleşmiş Milletler
the
Gazze'de
United
kendi
Nations has
çalışanlarını
not
dahi
even been able to
maalesef
protect its own
koruyamamıştır.
personnel in Gaza.
Gazze'de insanlara yardım için
Unfortunately.
koşturan 500
In
kişi
Gaza, 500
öldürülmüştür.
people rushing to help others
Ve
have
bunların
been killed. Out
326'sı
of those 500,
Birleşmiş Milletler personelidir.
326 were
Sayın
UN
Başkan,
staff members.
Değerli üyeler,
Esteemed President,
bakınız
distinguished members,
soykırım tıpkı
Now,
Holocaust gibi insanların toplu halde iması
genocide,
için
like the
kullanılan
Holocaust, is a
utanç
shameful
verici,
concept which
insanlık
refers
dışı
to the mass
barbarca bir
extermination
kavramdır.
of people. It's a
Oysa
barbaric
bugün
concept.
Gazze'de
Today,
sadece insanlar öldürülmüyor.
It's not only people who are being killed in
Gazze'de
Gaza,
hayvanlar
mind you.
hedef alınarak
Animals
öldürülüyor.
are being targeted and
Gazze'de
killed in Gaza.
tarım alanları, bahçeler,
In Gaza,
ağaçlar,
agricultural land,
otlar,
gardens,
Gazze'de
trees, grass,
asırlık zeytin ağaçları
century-old olive
yok
trees
ediliyor.
are being destroyed.
Gazze'de
In Gaza,
sular yok ediliyor.
water supplies are being
Kirletiliyor.
destroyed and
Gazze'de
polluted.
binalar, evler,
Buildings,
kütüphaneler,
homes,
hastaneler,
libraries,
okullar,
hospitals,
camiler,
schools, mosques,
kiliseler,
churches,
tarihi yapılar
and historical
bilinçli bir
structures
şekilde
in Gaza are being
yıkılıyor.
deliberately destroyed.
Gazze'nin toprağı insan içinde,
The soil
hayvan
of
içinde,
Gaza is being
bitki
rendered
içinde
useless for humans,
artık işe
for animals,
yaramaz
and for
hale
plants.
getiriliyor. İşte sizlere
So
bir başka fotoğraf daha.
now let me show you yet
Şimdi
another
size
photo.
soruyorum.
And let me ask you
Elimdeki
here.
şu fotoğrafın
Look at this
güvenlik arayışıyla ne ilgisi var?
What could this photo here
Bunun
possibly
adı
have to do with security
canlıya
concerns?
düşmanlık. Hayata
This is being
düşmanlık değil.
against
bu kürsüden açık açık ifade ediyorum.
Don't you think?
Gazze'de
Let
bir
me
savaş
state
yok.
this openly from this podium.
Gazze'de
There is
iki
no war
taraftan
in Gaza.
söz edilemez.
We cannot possibly talk about the
Gazze'de bir
presence
yanda
of two sides in
elinde en
Gaza.
modern,
Because
en
in
öldürücü
Gaza, on
silahlar
one
olan
side, there is a
düzenli
regular
ordu,
army
diğer
with the most
tarafta ise
modern, most lethal
masum
weapons,
siviller,
and on the other
masum
hand, there are
çocuklar
innocent
var.
civilians,
Bu
innocent
terörle
children.
mücadele değildir.
This is not fight
Bu
against
7 Ekim
terrorism.
olayı öne sürülerek yürütülen bir işgal, tehcir,
This is an occupation,
sürgün,
deportation,
soykırım, daha
exile,
doğrusu
genocide,
bir toplu
and
kıyım
life
politikasıdır.
destruction, mass destruction
Bugün
policy
Gazze
carried out
Hamas
by invoking the
bahanesiyle
events of
yok
October the
edilirken
7th.
eş
Today,
zamanlı
while
olarak
Gaza is being destroyed
Hamas'ın
under the
yönetimde
pretext of
olmadığı
Hamas,
Batı Şeria'da
concurrently,
adım adım
simultaneously,
işgal
the
edilmekte,
West Bank, where Hamas
infazlarla
is not in power,
masum siviller
is also being occupied
katledilmektedir.
step by step,
Üstelik
and innocent
İsrail,
civilians are being
Gazze
massacred through
ve Batı
executions.
Şeria ile
Moreover,
sınırlı kalmıyor,
Israel is not limiting
Suriye'ye,
itself to Gaza and the
İran'a,
West Bank only.
Yemen'e,
By launching attacks
Lübnan'a
on Syria,
saldırılar
on Iran,
düzenleyerek
Yemen, and
bölge
Lebanon,
barışını da
Israel
tehdit ediyor.
is also
En
threatening
son
regional peace.
arabulucu
Just
Katar'da
recently, an Israeli
ateşkes
attack
müzakereleri
took place
için
against a
toplantı
delegation
yapan heyete
delegation
İsrail
meeting in
saldırısı
Qatar for
gerçekleşmiştir.
ceasefire negotiations.
Katar'a yönelik saldırı göstermiştir
The
ki
attack on Qatar
İsrail
has also
yönetimi
shown that
tamamen
the Israeli
kontrolü
leadership is now
kaybetmiş.
completely out of control.
Netanyahu'nun barış yapmaya da rehineleri kurtarmaya da
Netanyahu
niyetinin
is
olmadığı
not obviously
bir kez daha
interested in forging
anlaşılmıştır.
peace or releasing
Sadece
the
komşuları değil,
hostages.
Orta Doğu'daki
Not only
tüm ülkeler
Israel's neighbors,
İsrail
but all
hükümetinin
countries in the Middle
pervasız
East are
tehditlerine
subject to the Israeli
muhatap oluyor.
government's reckless
Şunun da
threats.
farkına varalım.
And we must realize,
İsrail'in artan
following.
saldırganlığı sebebiyle Avrupa başta
due to
olmak
the
üzere
increasing
Batı'da
aggression of
2.
Israel
Dünya Savaşı sonrası
in Europe and the
ortaya
West
çıkan
in
değerler
general,
de
the values
çok
that
ağır
emerged after the
yara
Second
almıştır.
World War have been
En temel
eroded.
insan hakları, ifade
The
özgürlüğü,
most fundamental human
basın
rights,
özgürlüğü,
such as freedom of
gösteri ve
expression,
protesto
freedom of
özgürlüğü,
the press,
kadın
freedom of
hakları,
assembly and protest,
çocuk
women's
hakları,
rights, children's
demokrasi,
rights, democracy,
eşitlik,
equality,
adalet
and
gibi
justice
kavramlar
have
rafa
been
kaldırılmış.
shelved away.
Gelinen noktada
At this point,
hepimiz
we all
şu
have to
gerçeği
see
görmek zorundayız.
the following
Değerli
truth,
dostlar,
my dear friends.
vaat edilmiş topraklar
The Israeli
saplantısıyla
government,
hareket
driven by an
eden
obsession
İsrail
with the
yönetimi
promised lands,
yayılmacı bir
is
politikayla
openly threatening
bölge
regional
barışına
peace and
ve
shared
insanlığın
values of
müşterek kazanımlarına kastetmektedir. 3 semavi dinin kutsal beldesi,
Three celestial
insanlığın
religions.
ortak mirası olan Kudüs-ü Şerif
Jerusalem
bu radikalizmin doğrudan
hosts three celestial
hedefi.
religions and
Vicdan sahibi
a common
Musevileri de
inherited
rahatsız eden,
holy place.
onların da tasvip
Al-Quds
etmediği
is
dahası
holy for all
tüm
three
dünyada
religions.
antisemitizmi körükleyen bu cinnet
This
hali
madness disturbs
artık
conscientious Jews.
daha
It
fazla
fuels anti-Semitism
devam
around the
edemez.
world. We cannot continue with this madness anymore.
Gazze'de ateşkes bir an önce sağlanmalı,
We have to have
saldırılar
ceasefire in Gaza
durmalı,
as soon as possible.
insani
Attacks
yardımların
should stop.
engelsiz girişine
Humanitarian aid
mutlaka
should be able to
izin
enter with
verilmeli.
no obstacles.
Soykırım kadrosunun
The
uluslararası
genocide
hukuka hesap vermesi
team
temin
should be held
edilmelidir.
accountable vis-à-vis
İnşallah
international law.
bu mutlaka
And God
gerçekleşecektir.
willing, this will definitely
Gazze'de
happen.
yaşanan barbarlığa karşı
Vis-à-vis the
sesini
barbarity
yükseltmeyen,
taking place in
tavır
Gaza,
almayan herkes
everyone
bu
who is
vahşetin
keeping silent
sorumluluğuna ortak.
is accomplice to this
Buradan
barbarity.
bütün devlet ve
From
hükümet
here, I would
başkanlarına
like to call on
samimiyetle
all the heads
sesleniyorum.
of state and
Gün bugün.
government. Today is the
Gün
day.
insanlık adına Filistinli
Today
mazlumların
is the day
yanında
to stand
dimdik
firm
durma
alongside the
günüdür.
oppressed Palestinians and
Halklarınız
alongside humanity.
Gazze'deki barbarlığa tepki
While your
gösterirken
peoples back
gelin
home are reacting to the
sizler de
barbarity
adım
in Gaza,
adım
do
cesaretinizi
show the
gösterin.
courage to take action
Çocukların
here.
çocukları büyüttüğü Gazze'ye
Fulfill your
karşı
humanitarian duty
insanlık
toward Gaza,
görevinizi
where
yerine
children
getirin.
are raising
Bu
children.
vesileyle dünyanın farklı ülkelerinde
this occasion,
Gazze'li mazlumlara sahip çıkmak için meydanları dolduran
I would like to say
Gazze'li
the following.
masumlara
There
destek
are
olmak için
peoples all around the world who
denizlere
are taken to the
yelken açan
streets.
akademisyeniyle, sanatçısıyla,
Among activists and
siyasetçisiyle,
volunteers from different countries
aktivistiyle,
of the world,
öğrencisiyle,
academicians,
tüm
students,
Filistin
journalists,
savunucularına
everyone, all
en
the
kalbi
defenders of
selamlarımı yolluyorum.
Palestine. I would like to say to them, thank you so much. And clear bows
Kıymetli
and
delegeler,
favorable winds
13
for
yıl
their
boyunca
actions.
sizlere
Esteemed
bu
delegation
kürsüden
members,
komşumuz
for 13
Suriye'de
years,
yaşanan
I
zulümden
have spoken to you
ve
from this
çatışmalardan
platform about the oppression
bahsettim.
and conflicts in our
Nasıl
neighbor
bugün
Syria.
Gazze'li mazlumlar için
Just as I
sesimizi
raised my voice
yükseltiyorsak,
today for the oppressed
13
people
yıl
of
süresince
Gaza,
de Suriyelilerin
likely for
feryatlarına
13 years,
dikkat
I
çek.
have also drawn attention to the
Burada onların
cries
da
of the Syrians,
sesi,
and
nefesi
here
oldu.
I became their voice
1 milyon
and
insanın
breath as well.
hayatına, milyonlarcasının da
The persecution
vatanlarını
that caused the
terk
deaths
etmesine
of 1
sebep olan
million
zulüm,
people and
8
that
Aralık
forced millions
devrimiyle
more to
birlikte
flee their
hamdolsun
homeland has,
artık
thankfully,
tarihe
become a
karıştı.
thing of the past.
Suriyeli
With the
kardeşlerimiz
December 8th
8
revolution.
Aralık tarihi
Our Syrian brothers
itibariyle
and sisters
yeni bir dönemin
opened the doors to a new
kapılarını
period
açtılar.
as of December the 8th.
Eli kanlı bir rejime karşı
I believe that the
mücadeleyi
people of
kazanan
Syria who
Suriye
fought against
halkı
a bloodthirsty
inanıyorum
regime
ki
will
büyük
also be
bedeller
able to
ödeyerek
carry the victory
elde
they
ettikleri
achieved at
zaferi
great
de
cost
inşallah
to its
menziline
rightful place,
ulaştıracaktır.
God willing.
DAEŞ başta olmak üzere terörün
We'll
hiçbir
support
çeşidinin
with all our
olmadığı,
means the vision of a
güvenliğin
one
tesis
and unified
edildiği
Syria
bir
with
ve
no
bütün
forms of
Suriye
terrorism,
vizyonunu
especially
tüm
ISIS,
imkanlarımızla
being present.
destekleyeceğiz. Suriye'de istikrar
A free
kökleştikçe
Syria where security
hiç
is
şüphesiz
established is what we
bunun
want.
kazananı
As stability takes root in
Suriyelilerle
Syria,
birlikte
the
tüm
winners
komşu ülkeler,
for sure
tüm
will be all
bölgemiz
the neighboring
olacak.
countries, our entire region along
Körfez'deki
with Syrians.
kardeş ülkelere de
And the
Suriye'nin
brotherly countries in the
toparlanmasına
Gulf.
verdikleri katkılar
I would
için
like to thank them for their
teşekkürlerimi
contributions
iletiyorum.
for Syria
Bizimle
to
aynı
recuperate.
ilkeleri paylaşan tüm bölgesel
All the
ve
regional
uluslararası
and international
aktörlerle
actors who share the same
işbirliğimizi
principles with us,
inşallah
God
aynı
willing,
şekilde
we will continue
sürdüreceğiz.
with our cooperation with all those
Değerli dostlar,
actors in the same manner.
komşumuz
Esteemed
İran'la
friends,
ilgili nükleer dosyanın
we hope
bir
that
an
the
evvel
nuclear
diplomasi
issue with our
yoluyla
neighbor Iran will be
çözülmesini
resolved through
temenni ediyorum.
diplomacy as soon as possible.
unutulmamalıdır
It should
ki
not be forgotten
bölgemiz
that our
yeni bir
region
krizi
cannot
daha
tolerate
kaldıramaz.
yet another crisis.
Komşumuz Irak'ın istikrarı,
Meanwhile, the stability,
güvenliği
security
ve
and
refahı
prosperity of our neighbor
bölgemizin
Iraq
selameti
are
bakımından
extremely important
fevkalade
for the well-being
önemlidir.
of our region.
Kalkınma yolu projesi gibi kolektif refahı
In this
önceleyen
regard, we attach great
stratejik
importance to
hamlelere
strategic
bu
moves
bakımdan
based on stability
büyük
and
önem
prosperity,
atfediyoruz.
such as the
Kuzeyde
development path
her
project.
ikisi de komşumuz
In the
olan
north, we are
Rusya
hosting
ve
with
Ukrayna
great
arasında
enthusiasm the Istanbul process
İstanbul
between
sürecine
Russia and
büyük bir
Ukraine,
iştiyakla
both of
ev
which
sahipliği
are
yapıyoruz.
our neighbors.
Doğrudan görüşmeler sayesinde
Through
çok
direct
sayıda
talks, we
esirin
facilitated
ve
the
naaşın
exchange of
mübadelesine
several prisoners and
aracılık etti.
corpses, and we
Taraflar
worked to
arasında
identify the
barış
modalities
müzakerelerinin modalitelerini
peace
belirlemeye çalıştık.
negotiations between the
Unutmayın,
parties.
savaşın kazananı
forget,
adil bir barışın
there
kaybedeni
is no
olmaz
winner of
şiarıyla önümüzdeki
and no
dönemde
losers
de
of a just
ateşkes
peace.
için
So with this
çaba
motto in mind, in
göstermeye
the coming days
devam
also,
edeceğiz.
we will continue to work hard for a
Azerbaycan
peaceful
ve
ceasefire.
Ermenistan arasında barışın
Meanwhile,
tesisi için
We have
tarafları
encouraged the parties
en
from
başından
the very
bu yana
beginning to establish peace
cesaretlendirdik.
between Azerbaijan
8
and
Ağustos
Armenia.
tarihinde iki ülke arasında kalıcı
We are
barışa
pleased
giden
that steps were
adımların
taken on
atılmasından
August the 8th,
memnuniyet duyuyoruz.
steps that will enable the
Azerbaycan
establishment
Cumhurbaşkanı
of lasting peace
Sayın
between the two
Aliyev
countries.
ile Ermenistan
I would like to
Başbakanı
once again
Sayın
congratulate the President
Paşinyan
of
başta
Azerbaijan,
olmak
İlham
üzere
Aliyev, the
sürece
Prime Minister
katkıda
of
bulunan
Armenia, Nikol
Amerikan
Pashinyan,
Başkanı Sayın
and the American
Trump'ı
President Donald
burada
Trump, who
bir kez daha
contributed
tebrik
to this
ediyorum.
process, and I would like to
Bu
congratulate them.
vesileyle ülkemizle Ermenistan
On
arasındaki
this occasion, I would
normalleşme
also like to state
sürecinin
that the
kendi
normalization
rayında
process
ilerlediğini
between
de
our country and
ifade
Armenia
etmek
is
isterim.
progressing
Diğer
as
bir
planned.
arabuluculuk faaliyetimiz olan Ankara süreci kapsamında
Within the scope of the
Somali
Ankara
ile
process,
Etiyopya
which is another
arasındaki
of our
ihtilafın
mediation
halline
activities,
yönelik
we continue our
gayretlerimizi
efforts to resolve
sürdürüyoruz.
the conflict between
Tarafların
Somalia and Ethiopia.
bu girişimi hızla
that the parties
başarıyla
will successfully
neticelendirmelerini
conclude this genuine
temenni
initiative
ediyorum.
as soon as possible.
Değerli delegeler,
Distinguished
Karadeniz'de
delegation members,
güvenliğin teminatı olan Montreux
we have been
Sözleşmesi'ni
implementing the
tam
Montreux
89 yıldır
Convention, which
tarafsızlık
guarantees
içinde
security in the Black Sea.
harfiyen
And we have been
uygulamaktayız.
implementing
Ege
this
Denizi'ni
convention impartially
ve
and
Doğu
to the letter
Akdeniz'i
for exactly
ilgili
89
tüm
years
tarafların
now.
meşru
We want to see
menfaatlerine
the
riayet
Aegean Sea
edilen
and the Eastern
bir
Mediterranean
istikrar
as a basin
ve
of
refah
stability and
havzası olarak
prosperity
görmek
where the
istiyoruz.
legitimate interests of
Enerji
all parties
ve
involved are
çevre
respected.
başta olmak üzere her
We
konuda
are ready for
yapıcı
constructive
işbirliğine hazırız.
cooperation on all issues,
Komşularımızdan
particularly
da
on energy and the
aynısını
environment,
bekliyoruz.
and we expect the same approach from our
Bu
neighbors.
vesileyle
On this
Doğu
occasion,
Akdeniz'de
I
Türkiye'yi
would like to
ve
particularly
Kuzey Kıbrıs
underline that
Türk
projects
Cumhuriyeti'ni
which
dışlayan
exclude
projelerin
Türkiye and the
başarılı
Turkish Republic of
olamayacağını
Northern Cyprus
burada
in the Eastern
özellikle
Mediterranean,
vurgulamak
such
istiyorum.
projects which include
Kıbrıs
exclude us
adasının
will not be
batısında
successful.
Türkiye'nin hak ve
Türkiye has
yetkileri
rights and
adanın
authority in the
etrafındaki
western part of the
alanlarda
island
ise
of Cyprus,
Kıbrıs
while
Türklerinin
the Turkish
meşru
Cypriots have
hakları var.
legitimate rights in the
Daha
areas
evvel de
surrounding
teklif
the island.
ettiğimiz Doğu Akdeniz
Eastern
Konferansı
Mediterranean
müşterek bir
Conference,
zeminin
which we have
bulunmasına
proposed before,
katkı
would
yapacak.
contribute to finding
Kıbrıs
common
meselesinin
ground.
çözümü daha önce defalarca denenmiş
Resolving the
ancak
Cyprus
Rum tarafının
issue has been tried many
uzlaşmaz
times
tutumu
before,
nedeniyle
but,
tüketilmiş federasyon modeli üzerine bina edilemez. Kıbrıs adasında iki
due to the
ayrı
rigid stance
devlet
of the Greek
ve
Cypriot side,
iki ayrı
no resolution has
halk
been found.
vardır.
We cannot possibly
Kıbrıs Türkleri
have this as a foundation
adanın
for a
eşit
resolution
sahibidir
of the issue.
ve
There are two
azınlık
separate
olmayı
states and two
kabul
separate peoples on
etmeyecek.
the island of Cyprus. Turkish
Uluslararası
Cypriots are
toplum,
equal owners of the island
Kıbrıs
and they will
Türklerinin
not accept being a
yarım
minority.
asırdır maruz
The international
bırakıldıkları
community must put an end to
haksız
the unfair and
izolasyona
inhumane
artık
isolation that the
son
Turkish
vermelidir.
Cypriots have been subjected
Son
to for
3
half a
Birleşmiş
century now.
Milletler Genel Kurulu'nda yaptığım
I
çağrıyı
reiterate the
bugün
call
bir
I
kere
made
daha
at the
tekrarlıyor.
last three UN General
Uluslararası
Assemblies.
toplumu Kuzey
Let me
Kıbrıs
repeat. I
Türk
call on the
Cumhuriyeti'ni
international community to
tanımaya,
recognize the Turkish
diplomatik,
Republic of
siyasi
Northern Cyprus
ve
and to
ekonomik
establish
ilişkiler kurmaya
diplomatic, political
davet
and
ediyorum.
economic relations
Sayın
with it.
Başkan,
Esteemed President,
Sayın Başkan, değerli üyeler, önümüzdeki
distinguished
dönemde
members, in the coming period,
Türkiye-Avrupa Birliği
we
ilişkilerinde
desire a new
yeni
beginning
bir
and
başlangıç
vision in Turkey
ve
European Union
vizyon
relations.
arzuluyoruz. Bu vizyon günü
This
kurtaran
should
değil,
not be a vision that just
ufku
saves the
yeniden
day,
tayin eden,
but rather a
ortak
vision that
geleceğimizi
redefines the
şekillendiren
horizon and
bir
shapes our
vizyon
shared
olmalıdır.
future.
Bunun için elbette
For this,
Avrupa Birliği'nin de
of course
bizim
important
kadar
that the European
istekli
Union is as
ve
willing
kararlı
and
olması
determined as we are.
mühimdir. Net güvenlik sağlayıcısı bir ülke
As a
olarak
net security provider,
Birleşmiş Milletler,
we continue to
NATO,
contribute to the
AGİ
operations and
ve
missions of
Avrupa
the United
Birliği'nin
Nations,
harekat
NATO,
ve misyonlarına
OSCE,
katkılarımızı
and the
sürdürüyoruz.
European Union.
2026 yılındaki NATO zirvesini
The annual NATO summit
Ankara'da
next year
toplayacağız.
will be held in Turkey,
NATO
in Ankara.
müttefikimiz Amerika Birleşik Devletleri ile
The USA, who is our
ilişkilerimizi
NATO ally.
ticaret,
Our relations with
yatırım,
them are continuing
enerji
on trade,
ve
investments,
savunma sanayi
energy,
başta olmak üzere
defense industry,
birçok alanda
in addition
güçlendiriyoruz.
to other many areas,
Ata
and we're
yurdumuz,
strengthening our
Orta
relations
Asya'daki
with them.
kardeş
Meanwhile, we
ülkelerimizin
attach great
barış,
importance to the peace,
istikrar
stability
ve
and
refahı
prosperity
bizim
of our
için
brotherly countries in
vazgeçilmezdir.
Central Asia,
Türk
which
Devletleri
is our
Teşkilatımız,
ancestral homeland.
bölgesel bir çatı olmanın ötesine
Our
geçerek
organization of Turkic
küresel bir
states
aktör
is
olma
moving
yolunda
forward with
ilerliyor.
confidence on the path to becoming a
Köklü
global
beşeri bağlarımızın
actor, going
olduğu
beyond being merely a
Balkanlarda
regional umbrella.
barışın ve istikrarın sürmesi için
We are making intensive
yoğun
efforts to ensure the
gayret
continuation
içindeyiz.
of peace and stability
Temmuz
in the
ayında
Balkans,
ihdas
where we have
ettiğimiz
strong historical,
Balkan
cultural and people ties.
Barış
The
Platformu
Balkan
bu
Peace
yöndeki
Platform, which we
çabalarımızın
established in
en
July,
yeni
is
örneği.
the newest and most
KFOR
concrete
komutanlığı
manifestation of our
görevini
efforts in
de
this direction.
bu yıl
And
Ekim ayında bir kez daha
this
üstleneceğiz.
October, we'll once again assume the command
Afganistan'daki
of
yönetimin
KFOR forces.
toplumu kuşatıcı, dikkate alan bir anlayış sergilemesi temel arzumuz. Yeniden toparlanma sürecinde uluslararası toplumun Afgan halkını yalnız bırakmaması, Türkiye ve Türk milleti olarak Afgan kardeşlerimizin her daim yanında olmaya devam edeceğiz. Değerli dostlar, Güney Asya'da barış ve istikrarın muhafazasını son derece önemli görüyoruz. Nisan ayında Pakistan ve Hindistan arasındaki çatışmaya varan bu gerilimde varılan ateşkesten memnuniyet duyuyoruz. İki ülke arasında terörle mücadelede işbirliğini önemsiyoruz. Keşmir meselesinin Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi kararları temelinde Keşmirli kardeşlerimizin beklentileri ekseninde diyalogla çözülmesini destekliyoruz. Afrika kıtasıyla eğitimden sağlığa, altyapıdan ticarete kadar geniş bir yelpazede ilişkilerimiz yıldan yıla güçleniyor. Somali'nin terörle mücadelesine gereken her türlü desteği verirken insani yardım faaliyetlerimizi de sürdürüyor. Sudan'da 2 yılı aşkın süredir devam eden çatışma ortamı bizleri ziyadesiyle üzmektedir. Sudan'da akan kanın durması ve sürdürülebilir barışın tesis edilmesi uluslararası toplumun ortak sorumluluğu. Bizim bu yöndeki çabalarımız devam edecek. Büyük Göller Bölgesi yıllardır süren istikrarsızlık ve çatışmalardan ziyadesiyle müzdarip olmuştur. Kongo Demokratik Cumhuriyeti'nin doğusunda yaşanan çatışmalar bir an önce çözülmelidir. Amerika'nın arabuluculuğu ve Katar'ın kolaylaştırıcılığında yürütülen gayretleri samimiyetle destekliyoruz. Batı Afrika'da bilhassa sahil havzasında artan terör faaliyetlerini de endişeyle takip ediyoruz. Tarihi bağlarımızın bulunduğu bu bölge halklarının huzura ve istikrara kavuşmaları için çabalarımız devam edecek. İlhamını çift başlı Selçuklu Kartalı'ndan alan, bizim de 360 derecelik yaklaşımla yürüttüğümüz Türk dış politikasında Asya ülkeleriyle ilişkilerimiz büyük stratejik öneme sahiptir. Yeniden Asya girişimimiz çerçevesinde ASEAN başta olmak üzere bölgesel kuruluşlarla angajmanımız giderek derinleşiyor. Latin Amerika ve Karayipler bölgesiyle münasebetlerimizi ortaklık ruhuyla ve kazan yaklaşımıyla geliştirmeye büyük önem atfediyoruz. Bölgedeki tüm ülkelerle kurmuş olduğumuz dostane bağları daha ileriye taşıma irademiz bakidir. Kıymetli delegeler, uluslararası ticarette artan korumacılık eğilimleri ve tedarik zincirlerinde yaşanan kırılmalar dünya ekonomisinde esaslı değişimlere yol açıyor. Mevcut sınamalarla başarılı mücadele için Dünya Ticaret Örgütü'nün yer aldığı kurallara dayalı uluslararası ticaretin reforme edilmesini destekliyoruz. Ucuz, güvenli ve sürdürülebilir enerjiye erişimi özellikle gelişmekte olan ülkelerin kalkınma hedeflerinin gerçekleştirilmesi için vazgeçilmez buluyorum. Çin'den Avrupa'ya uzanan ve stratejik önemi haiz pazar geçişli Doğu-Batı Ortak Koridoru projesini ilerletiyoruz. Modern ulaştırma altyapımız ve Bakü-Tiflis-Kars hattıyla dünya ticaretinin gelişimine katkı sunuyoruz. Tabiata saygılı bir gelecek inşa etme hedefiyle çıktığımız yolda 2053 net sıfır emisyon hedefine doğru kararlılıkla ilerliyoruz. Eşim Emine Erdoğan'ın himayesinde yürüyen sıfır atık hareketini tüm dünyada her yıl dalga dalga büyüyen, daha fazla insana ve kalbe ulaşan bir farkındalık halkasına dönüştüğünü görmek bizim için ayrı bir bahtiyarlıktır. Bu süreçte gelişmiş ülkelerin sorumluluklarını yerine getirmesi artık bir tercihten öte yükümlülük haline gelmiştir. Dünyada en fazla kalkınma yardımı yapan ülkelerden biri olarak Birleşmiş Milletler'in sürdürülebilir kalkınma hedeflerine ulaşılması için çaba harcıyoruz. 2030 hedeflerine erişmek ve dünyanın dört bir yanındaki yüz milyonlarca insanı onurlu yaşama kavuşturmak için küresel finansman mimarisinin kimseyi geride bırakmama anlayışıyla uyumlu hale getirilmesini savunuyoruz. Burada şunu da özellikle dikkatinizi çekerek söylemek istiyorum. Biz jeopolitik sınamalarla uğraşırken İnsanlık yapay zeka alanında olağanüstü bir sıçramaya şahitlik ediyor. Çığır açan bu teknolojilerin dönüştürücü gücü ve sunduğu nimetlerden hiçbir toplumun mahrum bırakılmaması gerekiyor. Yapay zeka teknolojileri yeni bir tahakküm aracı olarak değil, insanlığın lehine kullanılmalı. Ev sahipliğini yaptığımız en az gelişmiş ülkeler için Birleşmiş Milletler Teknoloji Bankası dijital ve teknolojik açığın kapatılmasında kritik rol oynuyor. Hazırladığımız ve evrensel mutabakatla yakında imzaya açacağımız dijital dünyada çocuk hakları sözleşmesinin bu alanda küresel bir farkındalık oluşturacağına inanıyor. Çabalarımıza güçlü desteğinizi bekliyoruz. Diğer taraftan ırkçılık, yabancı karşıtlığı ve bilhassa İslam düşmanlığının vahim boyutlara ulaştığı günümüzde bir arada yaşama kültürünü tehdit eden bu akımlarla mücadele insanlık için zaruret halini almıştır. Medeniyetler İttifakı Yüksek Temsilcisi Sayın Moratinos'un Birleşmiş Milletler Genel Sekreterinin İslamofobi ile mücadele özel elçisi olarak da atanması kıymetlidir. Geçen sene burada ifade ettiğim gibi aile kurumu günümüzde daha önce hiç olmadığı kadar tehdit altındadır. Kadın ve erkekten oluşan aileyi savunmak aynı zamanda insanı, fıtratı, yaşamı ve geleceği savunmak demektir. Türkiye olarak artan saldırılar karşısında aileyi savunmaya devam edeceğiz. Kıymetli delegeler, insanlığın bir daha savaş felaketi yaşamaması için kurulan Birleşmiş Milletler'in kökleri içinde bulunduğumuz karanlık döneme ışık tutacak değerlerle doludur. Genel Sekreter Sayın Guterres'in teşkilatımızı etkin ve verimli hale getirmek amacıyla başlattığı Birleşmiş Milletler 80 girişimine desteğimiz tamdır. Bu girişimin Birleşmiş Milletler'in tüm faaliyetlerini daha da güçlendirecek bir süreç olarak başarıya ulaşmasını temenni ediyorum. Bu sürece İstanbul'u bir Birleşmiş Milletler merkezi haline getirme vizyonumuzdan da hareketle güçlü destek vermeye hazırız. 80. yılda Birleşmiş Milletler'i kuruluş ruhuna döndürecek adımları atmak hepimizin ortak sorumluluğudur. Biz güçlünün haklı olduğu değil, haklının güçlü olduğu bir sistem kurulana kadar dünya 5'ten büyüktür
The world is
demeye
bigger than
devam
five
edeceğiz.
until a system is established where the righteous are powerful, not the powerful are righteous.
Görevimiz sistemi
Our
terk
duty
etmek
is
değil,
not to abandon the system,
onarmak,
but rather to
yeniden
repair it
işler hale
and to
getirmek.
make it work again.
Hiç şüphesiz
Without a doubt,
daha adil
a
bir
more
dünya
just, a
mümkündür.
fairer world is
Türkiye
possible.
daha adil bir dünyanın
Türkiye will
inşası
patiently
için
continue its
mücadelesini
fight for the construction
sabırla
of a more just
devam
world.
ettirecektir. Rabbim yar ve
So,
yardımcımız
may God
olsun
help
diyorum.
and aid
Hepinizi
us all.
bir kez
Once
daha
again,
sevgi
let me
ve
greet you all
saygıyla selamlıyorum.
Kind
Kalın
regards
sağlıcakla.
and thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Turkey. The Assembly will hear an address by Her Excellency Dina Ercilia Boluarte Segara, President of the Republic of Peru. I request protocol to escort Her Excellency and invite her to address the Assembly.
Señora Presidenta de la Asamblea
Madam
General,
President of the
Annalena
General
Baerbock.
Assembly, Annalena Baerbock,
Señor Secretario General de las
Secretary
Naciones
General of the
Unidas,
United Nations,
Antonio Guterres.
Guterres,
Señoras
ladies
y señores,
and gentlemen,
jefes de Estado
heads of state,
y señoras presentes en esta magna
ladies
asamblea.
and gentlemen present
El
here
Perú
in this august forum.
Es el centro y cuna de
Peru is
grandes
the center and
civilizaciones
cradle
milenarias,
of great millennial
siendo la
civilizations,
última
the last
el
of which
imperio de
was
los
the
Incas,
Inca Empire,
que dejó
which
un
left
legado
us
de
a
grandeza.
legacy of greatness.
Somos herederos
We are
asimismo
also heirs
del
of
virreinato
the
del Perú, que
viceroyalty
abarcó
of
las
Peru,
2/3
which
partes
encompassed
de
2/3
América
of
del
South
Sur.
America.
Somos un país mestizo,
We are a mestizo
mezcla
nation,
fundamental
a
entre
fundamental
hispanos
mix
y
between
andinos,
Hispanic and Andean
orgulloso
peoples.
de ser heredero
Proud to
de
be
los
the
más
heirs
grandes
of the two
imperios de
greatest
Europa y
empires
América
of Europe
del
and
siglo
America
XVI.
of the 16th century.
El pueblo peruano
The
es
Peruvian
hoy
people today
resiliente,
are resilient,
emprendedor, solidario,
entrepreneurial,
amante
supportive,
de la paz,
and lovers of
la
peace,
libertad y la
freedom,
democracia.
and democracy.
Nuestros grandes
Our great writers,
escritores, Mario Vargas
Mario
Llosa
Vargas Llosa
y José
and
María
José María
Arguedas,
Arguedas,
compartieron la idea
shared the idea
de que el Perú
that
es
Peru
país
is a
de
country
todas
of
las sangres.
all bloods.
Nuestra identidad expresa
Our
creativamente
identity
que somos
creatively
la unidad
expresses that we are
de los
the
diversos,
unity of the diverse,
unidos bajo la misma
united
roja y
under the
blanca
same
bandera
red and
peruana.
white Peruvian flag.
En nuestro país
In our country,
viven los pueblos
native
originarios y los
peoples
pueblos
and
del
peoples
mundo
of the
en
world
paz
live together
y unidad
in peace and
como una
unity
gran síntesis del
as a
Perú,
great synthesis
país en el que vivió y trabajó
Peru,
durante
the
40
country
años
in
el Papa
which
León
Pope Leo
XIV,
XIV lived
nacionalizado
and worked
peruano,
in for 40
por su
years,
profundo
a
amor a
naturalized
nuestra
Peruvian
gente,
because of his deep love
tanto
for
por
our
su
people,
carácter
both
solidario y
for his
pacífico
supportive
como
as well
por
as
su fe
his
católica
peaceful
y
disposition
cristiana.
and his Catholic and Christian faith.
Todos los estudios señalan
All studies
que somos el
indicate
país más
that we are the
emprendedor
most
del mundo,
entrepreneurial
razón
country in the world,
por la cual después de la
which
pandemia
is
del
why, after the
COVID-19, que por
COVID-19
una
pandemic,
pésima
that
administración
due to
gubernamental
poor government
alcanzó
administration,
más de 2
claimed
millones
more
de
than 2
fallecidos.
million lives.
Nos hemos empezado a
But we have
recuperar
begun
logrando
to
hoy
recover,
más de 17 meses
and
de
today
crecimiento
we look back on more
consecutivo
than
de
17 months
nuestra
of
economía.
consecutive
Hemos
economic growth.
derrotado la
We have
recesión y la
overcome the
inflación
recession and
originada por la
inflation
violencia
caused by
política
political violence
y por la
and by
corrupción.
corruption,
Un golpe de
a
Estado
failed
fallido
coup d'etat,
y la fuga de más de
and the
20
flight
mil
of more
millones
than
de
$20
dólares
billion
entre los años
that was between
2021 y
2021 and
2023.
2023.
Hemos recuperado la
We
confianza
have
de la inversión nacional,
regained
pero
the trust of
también
national, but also
del extranjero,
of foreign
y
investment,
abrazado
and
a la
we
libertad.
have embraced freedom.
Somos un país solvente
We
y
are a
estable
solvent and a stable
por el
country
golpe de Estado de diciembre del
because of the coup
2022
attempt
que
of December
pretendía
2022,
instaurar una
which sought to
dictadura
establish a
sometiendo
dictatorship
a todos los
by
poderes del
forcing all
Estado.
branches of the state
Tuve que asumir
into submission. I had
constitucionalmente
to
la presidencia
constitutionally
de la
assume the
República.
presidency of the Republic.
Desde ese entonces
Since that
se
date,
estableció una narrativa
narrative
por la cual
was
el
established
golpista
by which
se
the coup
convirtió en
plotter
víctima y la
became a
presidenta
victim, and
que
the
asumió
president, who
constitucional y
constitutionally
legalmente
and
la
legally
presidencia,
assumed the presidency,
fue acusada
was
por algunas
accused
voces
by
de
some
golpista
quarters
y
of being a
usurpadora.
coup plotter and
La
usurper.
mentira trastocada en verdad
Lies turned into
y
truth,
la verdad en
and truth
mentira.
turned into lies.
Este es uno de los temas
This is
que
one
nuestro,
of the
de nuestro
issues
tiempo.
of our time.
La construcción
The
de
building
narrativas
of false
falsas que
narratives
buscan armar
to
proyectos
attempt to defend
políticos antidemocráticos.
anti-democratic
La
political
reflexión
projects.
es que las
The
ideologías
thinking
de
goes
odio,
that ideologies of
con sus
hatred,
proyectos de
with their
estados
projects of
fallidos
failed states
que crecen
that
como
grow
estados
into all-powerful
todopoderosos,
states,
requieren para
require,
imponerse una
in order
narrativa
to impose
falsa
their will,
para
a
lograr
false
su objetivo
narrative
por medio
in order to
de la
achieve their
violencia que
objectives
en el
through
poder
violence, and
aplasta
who,
las
once in
libertades,
power, crush
aplasta
freedoms,
los medios de comunicación,
silence
a la
the press
oposición
and
democrática,
democratic opposition,
viola los derechos humanos
violate
y da
human
inicio
rights,
al
and
control,
begin to control,
confiscación
to
y
confiscate,
expropiación
and
de
to
las empresas
expropriate
privadas,
private companies,
creando una burocracia
creating
corrupta
a corrupt
que
bureaucracy
destruye la
that
economía,
destroys the economy,
la sociedad y la
society,
moral pública.
and public morality.
El primer paso
The
para
first
todo
step
ello
for achieving
es
all
la
of this
construcción
is to build
de un
a
relato en el
narrative
que se
in order
miente,
to
se
lie,
engaña
to
y
deceive,
se manipula.
and to manipulate.
La ideología del odio de
The
clases
ideology
es
of
muy
class hatred
hábil
is very
en
skillful
trastocar la
at
realidad y
distorting
construir
reality
falsos
and
relatos,
building false
pues
narratives,
utiliza el método
because it uses the
totalitario de repetir
totalitarian
ad
method of
infinitum
repeating a
una
lie
mentira,
ad infinitum,
como se hiciera
as
en
was
el
done
mundo
in the world
antes de la Segunda
before
Guerra
the
Mundial
Second
y
World
como
War,
se viene
and
haciendo
as is happening
nuevamente
again
porque
today,
el
because
totalitarismo se
totalitarianism
renueva, se
renews
presenta con otros
itself, presents
rostros,
itself with other
porque lo
faces,
que sigue siendo una grave amenaza
but it remains
para
a
los
serious
países
threat
y
to
para el
countries
mundo.
and to the world.
El cínico relato se ve
The cynical
reforzado
narrative is
por el
reinforced
intervencionismo
by
en los
interventionism
asuntos
in the
internos de los
internal affairs
países,
of countries,
apoyando y
supporting
difundiendo
and spreading
falsedades
falsehoods
para
to
destruir la
destroy democracy
democracia y
and
eliminar
eliminate
la libertad.
freedom.
En el Perú
In Peru,
hemos superado
we have overcome
una fuerte, organizada y
strong,
persistente violencia
organized and
política que
persistent political
pretendía
violence
la
that
vuelta al
sought the
gobierno del
return of the
golpista,
coup plotters
y desde el
government,
año
and since
2024 se ha
2024,
logrado avanzar en el
progress has been made
restablecimiento de
in
la
restoring
estabilidad
stability
y
and
la
confidence.
confianza, razón por la cual
And this
la
is why
economía
the
peruana
Peruvian
logró
economy
crecer
managed
ese
to
año
grow this year by
3,3% y en el
3.3%.
presente año 2025
And
está
in the
superando
current
un
year,
crecimiento del
2025, is exceeding
3,5%,
3.5% growth.
previéndose que el
With
año
forecasts that in
2026 se
2026,
mantenga la tendencia
the
de la
trend of
expansión
economic growth
económica.
will continue.
El gobierno
The
garantiza
government
3
guarantees
años de
3 years
crecimiento
of
económico
economic growth,
encabezando las
being the leader
cifras en
in
Sudamérica.
South America.
La inflación que
Inflation
tenemos
is
es inferior al
below
2% anual.
2% annually.
Las reservas internacionales son
International
superiores
reserves
a los
amount
88
to more
mil
than
millones
$88
de
billion,
dólares. y nuestra moneda
and our currency
se mantiene
remains
estable y
stable,
se
and
fortalece
it's
cada día
getting
más.
stronger every day.
Nuestra deuda externa
Our
es menor
external
al
debt is less than
32,2% del
32.2%
PBI,
of GDP,
una de las más
one of
bajas
the
de
lowest
América
in the
y del
Americas
mundo.
and in the world.
Nuestro déficit
And our
fiscal
fiscal
este
deficit
año
this
será
year
de
will be
2,2%
2.2% annually.
anual. Señora Presidenta de esta magna Asamblea,
Madam President of this
el 24
magnificent
de
General
octubre se
Assembly,
creó
on
las
October
Naciones
24th,
Unidas,
the UN was
después
created
de la
after World
Segunda Guerra
War II,
Mundial, cuando se logró
when one
derrotar a
of
uno
the
de los
greatest
mayores proyectos
totalitarian
políticos
political
totalitarios
projects
construido
built
bajo una
on an
ideología de
ideology
odio
of hatred,
que produjo el más grave genocidio
leading
en la
to the most
historia
serious
de la
genocide in
humanidad,
human history,
el
the
Holocausto,
Holocaust,
que
was
jamás
defeated.
que
And this is
jamás
something that
debemos
we must
olvidar.
never, I say never,
Esa nefasta
forget.
guerra causó la
That
muerte
dreadful war
de 60
caused the
millones
death
de
of
seres
60
humanos.
million human beings.
Toda ideología de odio,
All
el odio de
ideologies of
clases
hate,
y su
class
elevación
hatred,
a
and
principio y
its
motor de la
elevation as a
historia,
principle and
el odio
driver
racial,
of history,
el
racial
nacionalista,
hatred,
el
nationalist
odio
hatred,
religioso,
religious hatred,
étnico,
ethnic
el odio a
hatred,
las
hatred
mujeres,
against
entre
women,
otros,
amongst others,
son los
are the
causantes de los
causes
peores
for the
crímenes
worst
en la
crimes
historia
committed
humana.
in human history.
Las ideologías de odio
Ideologies of
construyen
hatred
relatos como verdades
build narratives
absolutas
as absolute
que
truths
instrumentalizan a las
that
personas y a los
instrumentalize people
pueblos.
and nations.
La constitución
The
política de mi
political
patria
constitution of my
afirma
homeland,
que la
Peru,
defensa
affirms that the
de la
defense
persona
of
humana
the
y su
individual
dignidad
and their
es el
dignity
fin
is
supremo
the
de
supreme
la
goal
sociedad
of
y del
society
Estado.
and of the state.
El Perú rechaza en
Peru,
consecuencia los dos
Rejects
principales
the two
relatos de odio
principal
en el
hate
mundo,
narratives in the world,
el odio de clases y
namely
el odio
class hatred
religioso,
and religious
origen
hatred.
de guerras.
These are the
y
origins
violencia
of
humana.
wars and
En el
inhumane
Perú
violence.
hemos sufrido
In Peru,
más de 20
we
años
suffered
de
for
un
more than
terrorismo
20
mesiánico,
years from a
dogmático,
messianic,
violento y
dogmatic,
genocida
violent and
que le
genocidal
costó la vida a
terrorism
más de
that cost the
70,000
lives of more
peruanos.
than 70,000
El
Peruvians.
terrorista odia las
The terrorist
elecciones y el
hates
derecho
elections
ciudadano
and the citizens'
a
right
elegir y a
to
ser
choose
elegido.
and to be
Cuando participa,
and to stand for
lo
election.
hace para
When they
destruir la democracia
participate, they do so
desde
to
adentro.
destroy democracy from
Sin
within.
embargo,
However,
el relato que se ha querido
the narrative
imponer
that
es
they
una
wanted
mentira
to
flagrante.
impose is a flagrant lie.
Las Fuerzas Armadas
The
y
armed forces
policiales
and the police
que defendieron la
who
vida
defended
y
the
la
life
libertad de
and
los
the freedom
peruanos
of Peruvians
son
are
acusados
now
de violar
accused
los
of
derechos
violating
humanos,
human rights.
convirtiéndose así
Thus,
los
the
héroes,
heroes who
defensores de la
defended
vida,
life,
la
democracy,
democracia y la
and freedom
libertad en
are
victimarios
turned into
y los
victimizers,
terroristas
and the terrorists
en víctimas.
are turned into
Así,
victims.
Los héroes que
In this way,
defendieron
the
la
heroes who
democracia
defended
son
democracy are
perseguidos
being persecuted
en
in
juicios que se
trials
prolongan
that drag on
por
for
décadas, mientras que
decades,
los
while the
terroristas
terrorists
son
are
indemnizados y
compensated
considerados
and considered
víctimas.
victims.
El mundo al revés. La ONU, Presidenta,
This is the world in
ha
reverse.
sido un hito
The
fundamental en el
UN was
siglo
a
XX.
fundamental milestone in the
Pero en el
20th
siglo
century,
XXI
but in the
debemos
21st
estar
century,
más
we must
atentos.
be more vigilant.
Es nuestro deber
It is our
impedir
duty
que el mundo se
to prevent the world
precipite
from
hacia
plunging
nuevos genocidios
into new
y nuevas
genocides
violencias.
and new violence.
No es aceptable en un mundo
It is not
civilizado
acceptable in a
que un
civilized
país
world that
invada
one country
a otro,
invade another
utilizando un
using
relato
a
falso
false narrative
para
to
justificar
justify
una guerra que
a
ataca
war,
principalmente
a
a
war
la
that first
población.
and foremost attacks the
No
civilian
es
population.
admisible la
It is
matanza
not
de
acceptable
civiles,
to slaughter
la
civilians,
captura de
to
centenares de
capture
jóvenes,
hundreds of young people,
mujeres y hasta
women,
niños
and even children,
para
and
utilizarlos
use
como
them
rehenes.
as hostages.
Vivimos ante la amenaza
We
del
live under
crimen
the threat of
internacional
international organized
organizado.
crime.
En el Perú,
In Peru,
La delincuencia internacional
International
dedicada
crime based
a la extorsión recurre a métodos terroristas.
Extortion uses terrorist methods such as bomb attacks to submit citizens to its will.
Estas organizaciones
These criminal
criminales
organizations
que utilizan armas de guerra
that
han
use
creado
weapons of war
mecanismos
have
financieros
created
para lavar
financial
el dinero
mechanisms to
manchado de
launder
sangre,
blood-stained money,
remitiendo grandes
sending
sumas
large
a
sums
sus países
back
de
to their
origen.
countries of origin.
Se pretende normalizar
They
esta
seek
violencia
to
que
normalize this
requiere
violence,
para su
which
derrota
requires, in
el
order to be defeated,
reconocimiento por la
recognition
ONU
by the
como
UN
organizaciones
as
terroristas
terrorist
y una
organizations
nueva legislación
and
nacional
new national
e
and international
internacional
legislation
que detenga su amenaza al
to
sistema
stop them being a
democrático
threat
y al
to the
desarrollo de
democratic
los
system
pueblos.
and to the
Es
development of
imperativo
peoples.
asimismo
It is also
actuar
imperative
contra el
that we act
narcotráfico y la
against
minería
drug
ilegal
trafficking and illegal
que
mining
destruye el medio
that
ambiente,
destroys the environment,
contaminan los
pollutes
ríos y
rivers,
condena
and
a los
condemns
pueblos
peoples
y a las
and
personas
individuals
a la
to
esclavitud.
slavery.
El crimen internacional
International
tiene
crime
sometidas
has subjected
a miles de
thousands
mujeres
of women
extraídas de sus
taken from their
hogares, de
home
sus países con
countries
violencia
through
y
violence
engaños
and deception
y explotadas y privadas de su
being
libertad.
exploited and deprived of their
Señoras
freedom.
y señores,
Ladies and gentlemen,
vivimos momentos que nos
we are
recuerdan
living
los
through
episodios
times
más
that recall
oscuros de
the
nuestra
darkest
historia
chapters
moderna.
of our modern history,
Y el Perú
and
está
Peru
convencido
is
que el mundo no
convinced that
necesita
the
menos
world does
ONU,
not need less
sino
UN,
más y mejor
but
ONU.
more and a better
Una
UN,
que esté acorde con
one
los
that is in
tiempos
tune with the times,
en los que las ideologías de
in times
odio
in
que
which
tanto daño
ideologies of
causaron y
hatred that
causan
cause and
a la
cause
humanidad
so much damage to
se han
humanity
refugiado en la
have taken
mentira,
refuge in
en las
lies,
informaciones
in
falsas y en
misinformation,
la
and
penetración
which have
de las
penetrated
sociedades
democratic
democráticas.
societies.
El Perú, como miembro fundador,
Peru,
está
as a founding
comprometido con
member,
un
is
sistema
committed
multilateral
to an
abierto,
open multilateral
basado
system based on international
y
law
los principios
and
de
the
la
principles
Carta de Naciones
of the UN
Unidas.
Charter.
El pilar, el modelo
And we see in
La
the
ONU,
UN the
pero es
pillar
momento
of the model
de hacer un
that has
alto
brought peace and
y
prosperity.
mirar lo que está
But
pasando
we
en el
have to
mundo a
look
nuestro
at what's
alrededor.
happening around us
En
in the
este
world.
momento estamos
At this
aquí,
time, as we're meeting
pero al otro
here,
lado del mundo
in other parts of the
están
world,
matando niños,
they are killing
niñas, personas
children,
inocentes.
girls, boys, innocent people.
La prosperidad al mundo debe ser
Prosperity
en ese trabajo responsable y unido.
will only come if we
Que
are
hoy debe
united and work
ingresar a un
together.
proceso de adecuación
And we have to
frente a las
adapt
nuevas
to
amenazas.
new threats.
Cada uno de nuestros países
Each of our countries
tiene el deber de
has the duty
contribuir al desarrollo
to make their
de
contribution
soluciones a los
towards finding
problemas
solutions to
que
the
enfrentamos, y en
problems
eso
that we all
se
face
esfuerza
together.
mi país.
And my country is
Pero la
striving to do this.
interconexión de nuestras
But
sociedades
the
y
interconnection of
economías
our societies
hacen que
and
solo a
economies
través de la
means that it is only through international
internacional
cooperation
podamos resolver la
that we
crisis
can resolve
que
the
enfrentamos.
crises which we face.
Si no reformamos las
If we
Naciones
do not
Unidas,
reform the United
nuestra
Nations,
casa común,
our common home,
para devolverle
to restore
representatividad y efectividad a su
representativeness and
acción,
effectiveness to its
corremos
action,
el grave
then
riesgo
we
de ver
run
desaparecer
the very serious risk
uno de los
of seeing
instrumentos
one
más
of the most
preciados
precious
que
instruments
tiene
that
la
the international
comunidad
community
internacional
has for
para la
world
estabilidad del
stability
mundo. Por
disappearing.
ello, el Perú apoya
For
los
this reason,
trabajos de la
Peru
iniciativa
supports the
ONU
work of the
80,
UN 80 initiative,
iniciados por el secretario
launched by the
general,
Secretary General,
poniendo
placing
especial
particular
énfasis en la
emphasis
necesidad de
on
volver
the
a
need to
centrar
refocus
la
the
organización
organization
en sus
on
funciones
its
fundamentales,
fundamental functions,
acercándola
bringing it
a las
closer to
necesidades
the
de los
needs
pueblos,
of peoples,
a la vez que
and
volviéndola
at the same
más
time
eficiente.
making it more efficient.
La ONU 80 debe ser
UN
una
80
oportunidad
must
para
be an
fortalecer
opportunity
el
to strengthen
multilateralismo
multilateralism
y asegurar
and
que la
ensure
organización
that the
esté
organization
mejor
is better
preparada para
prepared
cumplir
to achieve
sus
its
objetivos
essential
esenciales.
goals. This reform can only truly become fully effective if it is complemented by a transformation in UN governance that prevents institutional stalemates when it comes to decision-making, while ensuring its suitability. Ladies and gentlemen, in Peru, our government is working to meet its commitments, both to our citizens as well as to the international community, facing the threat of organized crime resulting from the collapse of tyrannical governments that led to migration to other countries. This is true of our country. From day one, my government has fought to restore governance in the country and to defeat polarization and violence. In Peru, there is full separation of powers, the rule of law, respect for freedom and human rights. My government is the most stable of the last 5 years, during which 5 presidents have succeeded one another. We are fighting for citizen security, facing crime that takes advantage of the rise in the price of gold and drug trafficking. We have achieved positive, verifiable results in these areas. We are working to strengthen human capital. We are fighting child malnutrition and anemia. And we are building schools and hospitals throughout the country, which has not been done in recent years. The priority is children, women, and the Peruvian family. We are modernizing the country's infrastructure, ports, airports, roads, bridges, designing an economy that is better connected to the world, as well as a firm policy for fighting corruption. Our goal is to guarantee free and impartial elections, defeating the attempt of a violent minority that seeks their failure. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations organization has always been present in the modern history of my country, particularly in its most difficult moments. Similarly to what is happening elsewhere in the world, and despite our efforts, Peru today finds its democratic institutions and the rule of law under attack by the polarization of politics, the cause and consequence of the return of extremist violence. We suffer from the scourge of transnational organized terrorist crime, which causes deaths, attacks, insecurity, and drug trafficking that destroys the social fabric. We face the threat of climate change that is destroying our Amazon, causing the melting of our glaciers, and putting our biodiversity at risk. We promote inclusive and sustainable growth in the context of opposing powers. But none of these problems is merely national, but global. This is why we need the United Nations to once again be a forum for dialogue and cooperation. I wish to recall the legacy of Ambassador Javier Pérez de Cuellar, who managed to do relevant work in the organization despite the Cold War. With that example in mind, and in view of our region's adherence to the purposes of the Charter, and in order to ensure better representation, we believe it is time for the next Secretary General to come from Latin America. Ladies and
y
gentlemen,
señores, el Perú está comprometido en
Peru
lograr
is
que esta
committed to
Asamblea
ensuring
General
that this General
no
Assembly
sea una simple
this year is not
efemérides,
a mere
sino
commemoration,
la reafirmación
but
de
the
nuestro
reaffirmation
compromiso
of our commitment
hacia una acción
to
colectiva
collective action
que revitalice
that
a las
will
Naciones
revitalize the
Unidas
United
como
Nations as
herramienta
a
que
tool
apoye
that
la
supports
paz
peace
y la unidad
and
global,
global
así
unity
como el
as well
desarrollo.
as development.
Tenemos que ser firmes
We must
en la
stand
verdad
firm
frente a los relatos
in
que
the
la
truth, in the
escamotean,
face of narratives
la
that try to conceal
pervierten
it,
o
pervert it,
mienten
or
abiertamente
openly
con el fin
lie
de
in
ocultar
order to hide agendas
agendas que no
that do not
corresponden a nuestro
correspond
tiempo
to our
y
time,
mucho menos
much less
al
to the
destino de la
destiny
humanidad.
of humanity.
Por ello,
For this reason,
es imperativo
it is
fortalecer
essential
la verdad
that we
frente a los
strengthen
relatos
truth against
basados
narratives
en
that
el
are based
odio,
on
la
hatred,
mentira
the
repetida que
lie
busca
repeated
imponerse
that seeks to
y que
impose
solo
itself and
engendra
only
destrucción.
leads to destruction.
Pese a todos los
But despite
obstáculos,
all of these
la
obstacles,
verdad
truth
se abre
will
paso
find a
y
way,
nos hace
and
libres.
truth will set us free.
Paz
Peace
y unidad
and
para el
unity
Perú y el
for
mundo.
Peru and for the world,
Huarajuchas del planeta.
for all those on the planet.
Kuskayan Yankasun. Ama Chiknikuspa. Ama Yuyakuspa. Buscando el desarrollo de nuestro pueblo.
Let us seek the
Señoras,
development of our
presidentes y
peoples,
presidentes del mundo.
presidents of the world.
Juntos trabajemos
Together, let us work together
sin odiarnos,
without hating one
queriéndonos,
another.
procurando el desarrollo
Let us
de
work
nuestros
for the
pueblos.
development of our peoples.
Sí a la vida,
Yes to
no a
life,
la violencia
no to
y no a la
violence,
guerra.
and no
Muchas
to
gracias.
war. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Peru.
Karunia yang diberikan oleh Yang Maha Kuasa kepada kita sungguh sangat besar dan sungguh sangat beragam. Namun tengah segala karunia tersebut, kita pun harus berani untuk menjadi bangsa yang berani, bangsa yang tidak takut tantangan, bangsa yang tidak takut rintangan, bangsa yang tidak takut ancaman.